across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon and welcome to Talk Drive. It's very warm in this studio, but it's completely the wrong, incorrect, badly predicted weather outside the studio. It looks absolutely dire. In fact, it's sort of overcast, dusky, smoggy, and actually raining as well. How could the BBC weather app get it so wrong? I don't have it on my phone because I don't trust the weather and I don't trust the BBC or most weather forecasters, apart from Joe Wheeler and indeed John Hammond, who are the only two that I trust, the only two I'll have on my programmes. The rest, I'm afraid, I don't trust, although I'm sure they're all marvellous people. But they generally tell you, you know, do wrap up warm. No, I'll not wrap up warm. I'll get hypothermia if I want to. It's nothing to do with you, Louise Lear. Right then, there are other things to talk about, including the public, and should we be standing up to shoplifters? That's what a police chief says. Surely it's the police's role themselves in order to catch those shoplifters. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about the police finally saying they're going to reveal the ethnicity of suspects after cover-up claims. You may remember a few weeks ago that horrendous incident in Liverpool. They said a white British man aged 53 was the suspect they wanted to talk to. Then a few days later on my show, a smaller but similar thing happened in Leicester, and they wouldn't tell us the ethnicity of the suspect. Later turned out to be a Sikh. Doesn't matter whether it is or whether it isn't, it's just simply the information that is there. Don't put expensive items at the front of your shops. That's what Labour has told shopkeepers as well. Honestly, what is going on in this country? Well, the United States, a big report from them, says that human rights have worsened, and indeed Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, saying he had a knife pulled at him in a migrant camp in France. There's lots to talk about. I want to get your views on it today. What's the most inaccurate weather forecast you've ever come across? Was it the BBC or did it come from somewhere else? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp voice message, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Loads to discuss between now and 7 here on Talk. Yes, in this particular part of London where we are, we're in London Bridge, the BBC weather app says that at this exact moment at 4 o'clock it is supposed to be 25 degrees, a 0% chance of rain, it is currently raining, and it's meant to be sunshine with a 10 mile an hour wind. I don't know if we can actually use our camera, this camera here, to look out the window. Is that possible? I'm just asking our people behind the scenes if we can do that. If you're watching on the screen, you can say, yes, you can. It's an absolutely drizzly, damp, dank, dark day. And you can just about see me in the reflection there. I'll hold out my hand so you can see it there. That's me. And our window, it is an absolutely grim day, completely the opposite of what the weather forecast, and specifically the BBC weather forecast, has said. In an hour's time it's meant to be 25 degrees with an 11% chance of rain. We will see exactly where we are. We're going to keep an eye on this BBC weather forecast, and we will have we're actually just going to show right now what the BBC weather forecast says. If you're watching on the screen there, it says 25 degrees, and our news editor has asked BBC Weather what's going on here. 25 degrees, 0% chance of rain, sunny, beautiful day, and that is the view outside the window today over London Bridge. It's damp, it's dank, it's misty, it's horrible, it's grim. It's a completely incorrect weather forecast. I just don't trust weather forecasters. I had a bad experience with a weather forecaster once a long time ago in my love life that shall remain unspoken, and I've never trusted them since. So that's essentially it. Apart from Joe Wheeler, who is brilliant, we love Joe Wheeler, and John Hammond is fantastic as well. We like them both, but the rest of them, they're usually wrong in so many different ways, and I just don't trust weather forecasters and weather forecasters. David Dorset says, look at windy.com. What's on windy.com? I don't know, but I might I might have a look at that in one of the breaks. So thanks for that, says Dave in Dorset. What's the most? It's live satellite weather, I'm told. So there we are. Maybe that's more accurate than the BBC stooges of the Met Office anyway. So what's the weather like where you are? Is it the same as what the BBC weather app tells you it is? I don't have it on my phone because I just don't trust the weather forecasts anyway. What I often worry about is the temperature, and actually I'm wearing shorts today because I thought it was going to be a lot warmer than it is. I tell you something, it's warm in this studio because the air conditioning has stopped working, so that's wonderful, isn't it? But let us know your thoughts on all of this. 0344 499 1000. Right then, I want to talk about the public being told to stand up to shoplifters. This is a policing chief, a police and crime commissioner, a Conservative, who has said that, as Matthew Barber, police and crime commissioner for Thames Valley, says it's wrong to think tackling thieves was just a job for the police. Shopkeepers have also been told by the Labour Party, don't put expensive items at the front of your shops. Well, Dr. Rakib Hassan is with me now. Rakib, first of all, what is the weather like where you are?
Well, very similar. I thought it'd be a very sunny day throughout the entire day, but it's become very gloomy all of a sudden, and it looks like the heavens may well open.
Yeah, well, we're going to keep up with the weather. We're going to see if by some miracle it's 25 degrees and incredibly sunny at 5 o'clock. On to the matter we asked you on the show about, Rakib, which is the shoplifting issue. What do you think it says when you have a police and crime commissioner who says if you're not even going to challenge people, you're not going to try and stop them, then people will get away with it? That's not just about policing. That's a bigger problem with society. People who don't do anything, you're part of the problem. Well, given that so many security guards have been told not to do anything because they can be liable, they can't tackle these people to the ground because they can be sometimes charged for that. Well, actually, is this a fair thing for Matthew Barber to say, do you think?
No, I think this is the police and crime commissioner for Thames Valley, Matthew Barber, who's ultimately suggesting that the responsibilities and duties of police forces across the country, especially when it comes to fighting shoplifting on our high streets, in our inner city centres, these responsibilities and duties should be outsourced to ordinary members of the public. And I have a real problem with that, because firstly, it seems like we're ultimately giving up on the bread and butter of neighbourhood policing, especially when it comes to crime such as shoplifting, which, to be honest, on many high streets, shoplifting has become de facto decriminalised. Such as the absence of neighbourhood policing, which has been gutted in recent times. But I think that encouraging members of the public to throw themselves into threatening situations, when in some cases security guards have been encouraged not to enter those situations themselves, who tend to be, they may be of a greater physical stature and maybe better trained to deal with those kind of situations. I think it's extremely reckless to encourage ordinary members of the public, and to say that this tells us that we've become a very poor society because they're members of public who may well see instances of shoplifting but refuse to confront those who are guilty of doing so. There could be a variety of reasons for that. When we see the rates of knife crime, then can you really blame members of the public being hesitant to enter those kind of situations?
Yeah, well, it's a very good point. He's also said if you've got someone in your store now stealing from you, call 999. Also, ideally try to stop them leaving. Don't just stand there and watch, which a lot of people do, which frustrates me. I mean, if someone has a knife or has a weapon or is just bigger than you and you're not happy with attempting to stop them, why should you have to do that if you've just gone out to the shops? I mean, it's nice when people do that, but a lot of people can put themselves at huge risk as a result. And as you say, you may be in a weird situation where there are people who have maybe standing up to a shoplifter themselves, but the security guards in the store aren't. And I just wonder whether there are people watching and listening who have stood up to a shoplifter who might want to tell me their experience and what actually happened. 0344 499 1000. Rakib, I just want to move on to another matter here, which is something that I really care about, because it's in regard to revealing the ethnicity of suspects after alleged crimes occur. When what happened in Liverpool a few weeks ago, when I'll be very careful because there are charges, but nonetheless there was a suspect at that time, and we were told it was a 53-year-old white British man. That information was put in the public domain within about 90 minutes of the incident happening. I was on air on the Saturday, and there was a smaller incident involving a car and 3 people, I think. and there was a man in Leicestershire, and we asked the Leicestershire police and said, well, you know, what is the ethnicity of the suspect, of the person you've taken into custody? And they wouldn't tell us. Now the guidance has been changed, and indeed earlier today the policing minister Diana Johnson, Dame Diana Johnson, spoke to the BBC about this. Let's see what she had to say.
This interim guidance will set out that on charge, usually name and addresses are given. We also, in most cases, will want to see nationality or ethnicity given as well. This goes back, as you rightly say, to last year and what happened, that appalling atrocity in Southport. And one of the things the government did at that point was to ask the Law Commission about what further information could be disclosed without prejudicing a trial, because obviously we want to make sure that if a person is charged and then goes to court and is convicted, that brings justice for the victim. So we don't want to do anything that could in any way prejudice that trial, and that's why we asked the Law Commission to look at that, as well as the College of Policing to give this advice to police forces about the disclosure of information. But we welcome what's happened with this interim guidance today.
Dame Diana Johnson there, the policing minister for the government. She's right in that obviously the last thing any of us would want to do is prejudice a trial, but I can't really see how a trial would be prejudiced simply by giving the ethnicity or indeed immigration status of the suspect. What do you make of this, Rakib?
No, I think there needs to be far greater transparency when it comes to the ethnic background and, if relevant, the immigration status of those who have been charged with serious offences. Now, of course, we have to be careful in terms of talking about live situations, but I think much of this is actually a reaction to an incident in Nuneaton, in Warwickshire. And I think that the real problem with our failing democracy is that there is a transparency deficit at the heart of it. And I think far too many public institutions, their model of diversity management is ultimately masking or concealing their ethnic, racial, or indeed religious identity of those who have been charged with serious offences. And I think that the problem with that is that's a gift for conspiracy theorists, and conspiracy theories can spread like wildfire in the sphere of social media. So I think it's actually very important. I think one of the ways that public institutions can rebuild trust with much of the British public is actually being more transparent.
Yeah, and treating them like adults, Rakib. Treating them like adults.
And absolutely, treating them like adults. I think that is the key to rebuilding state-citizen relations in modern Britain.
Rakib, thank you. Great common sense, as always. Dr. Rakib Hassan, social policy analyst there. I want to talk to Mark in Brighton, who is a former policeman. I think you served your 30 years, Mark. And just tell us your perspective on this, especially in regard to shoplifters. Presumably, you've come across a few in your time.
Hello, Peter.
Hi there.
Yes, I have. And you're right. I was a cop for 30 years. Started, obviously done my probation in uniform, and then went on to plainclothes teams. So I used to go out in Oxford Street up in London, tackling organised shoplifters, pickpockets and what have you. And then came down to Brighton, and done the same here, worked on surveillance teams and organised crime teams and stuff like that. But I've seen the way that police no longer deal with shoplifters and how much it's increased. And I used to, when I left the police, which was about 5 years ago, I used to see shoplifting every single time I'd go into a shop. I see people loading up their bags, and I would stop people, wrestle people to the ground, and not anymore. Because I think the risk and reward isn't worth it. I think.
I mean, that is pretty stark, Mark. When you're saying this, you have the expertise, the experience. You know this probably better than 99% of the population, maybe more, in regard to shoplifting, and you don't feel as if you're in a position to be someone who does what this Police and Crime Commissioner has said people should do. And I suppose the question is very reasonable. Well, why should we? Surely it's up to the police to deal with this, but the fact is the police now aren't dealing with it.
You're absolutely right. And the reason that the police aren't dealing with it is because it's so much easier not to deal with it. The thing is with the shoplifters, they are stealing to support a drugs habit, 99% of the time, I should think. And all the time they're shoplifting, they're not burgling. So the police and crime commissioner can say that the figures are down for burglaries, for car theft and all of the other things, because it's so easy, because we appear to have decriminalised the offence of shoplifting. So the figures are going down as far as the more serious crimes, and it's almost victimless, because we're not seeing the statistics on it, and that's why it's absolutely rampant at the moment. You've only got to look at the TikToks and Instagrams and all the videos of the people loading up their bags.
Yeah, and Mark, just finally, I wonder, you know Oxford Street really, really well, and this now, in fact, the Metropolitan Police was lauding this idea to have a purple line to say to people, don't have your mobile phones, don't be using your mobile phone because people will come by and snatch it. And the Metropolitan Police said this is marvellous, and this shows, a really good scheme by Curry's, I think was the retailer that was doing it. I just find that really sad. I just find that very sad, and also bad that we've sort of accepted that this is just people snatching mobile phones. It's just kind of part of what happens in Oxford Street and many, many other streets right up and down the country.
I agree, and I mean, I was up in Oxford Street and dealing with the crimes there, where they were snatching watches, expensive watches at the back of Oxford Street off of tourists and what have you, 20 years ago. And the trouble is they don't. We used to have little crime teams. So we would go out in Oxford Street. I was at Marylebone. We used to go out. There used to be about a dozen of us. At the best of times, and we would just be looking for criminals, and there's plenty of them, and it's like fishing. But the trouble is, you reduce the amount of cops and you reduce the amount of crime teams, and now I don't think there's any anymore. There's no plainclothes bobbies or constables going out tackling crime, looking for it.
It's all so much of it appears to be reactive now, Mark, rather than actually just bobbies on the beat. Yeah,
and I tell you, these young cops, they're going out to reports of shoplifting and reports of this, that, and the other, and it's very difficult because they're told not to make arrests unless they have to, because they can't be taken from the streets to do the 3 or 4 hours of paperwork that it takes, because they need
it's absurd, Mark. It's absolutely absurd. It needs to be fixed. Listen, thanks for your perspective. I really, really appreciate it. That's Mark in Brighton there, telling us about his life and as a police officer and how he sees things now. Tell us your experiences as well. 0344 499 1000. Maybe you've been a victim of crime. Maybe you've tried to stop a shoplifter. I'd be really interested to hear from you. Lots on the weather as well. Debbie has been in touch from north of Stamford in Lincolnshire. She says it's beautiful. She sent me a picture of her beautiful dog there out in the sunshine. She says it's 31 degrees here. I've been ranting about the BBC weather app getting it so completely wrong. Drizzly, dark, dank and horrible here in London Bridge. Anyway, Jane says they cannot predict the weather for today. How can they predict the next few years? Mega Vegan says every day I check the forecast app at 9 a.m. I check it again before my walk at noon. Never the same, often totally different, yet they're predicting the weather 30 years from now. And Bill says perhaps the government does the weather after all. They lie about everything else. I've been given lots of different ideas. The Rain Spotter app showing rain for London in 15 minutes. Dawn says, why on earth are you looking up the weather in the BBC? I'm not. I don't have the BBC weather app. My boss does. You can't trust anything the BBC says. And Dawn says it would be madness for anyone to tackle shoplifters. You could get stabbed or punched. We should ensure that the police do their job, says Dawn. Lots more to come on not just the weather but also shoplifting. Also, human rights have worsened in Britain according to the United States. We'll also talk in just a second to Henry Bolton about Channel migrants arriving at a record speed under Starmer. Whose fault is it? Not ours, says the government. Stay with us.
for the first half of the year, the number of crossings is up 48% on the same half of 2024.
Yeah.
So that's how bad the problem is getting now, and it's not. And Jackie Smith, the former cabinet minister under Tony Blair, and former Home Secretary, who's now an Education Minister and now a peer, making the argument, well, it's the fault of the last lot. Actually, the problem has got worse since Keir Starmer.
Quite substantially worse.
Quite substantially worse, 50% worse since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just some breaking news, and that is that the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has said a viable chance of reaching a ceasefire in the Ukraine war now exists because of US President Donald Trump's work, but Britain stands ready to increase pressure on Russia if necessary. Yes, who'd have thought that just because someone started talking about a ceasefire, talking about peace, perhaps even talking to Putin, that actually we could get closer to a ceasefire. That is something that I've been talking about for a very, very long time now. Trump is talking about it, and of course there are still people who don't like him and say he's capitulating to Putin. Well, he hasn't done anything yet, so let's see what happens. There are loads of people who've got in touch about the weather, where they are, and the accuracy of weather forecasts. Thank you to Philp as well, who's been in touch about shoplifting. We'll come to that in a second. Andy says, thank you for calling out our pathetic Met Office and most weather forecasters and apps. Great at telling you what the weather is doing now, but have more chance predicting the lottery numbers than forecasting the weather. Says Andy. Steve Kelly says it's 18 degrees in Midhurst in West Sussex, and we've had a large thunderstorm and rain. It's supposed to be 24 degrees and sunny. The weather forecast is hopeless. Steve, thank you for that. And Midhurst is a beautiful part of the world where I've been to many times. It is really, really nice, and I hope that you have a lovely day there, even though the weather is not exactly what you want it to be. Carol says it's 24 degrees here in Liverpool with wind at 9 miles an hour. You seem to be doing well. And Carol says, please can we see the shorts? Carol, you don't want to see the shorts, let me tell you. On the store detectives and the shoplifting story, lots of people getting in touch. Elle says it's the store detective's job to catch shoplifters. The police should then show up and nick them. It's the old-fashioned way. It used to work. What happened? And a really moving one actually from Muriel, who says my other half was a security officer in a major supermarket. She was on the front door, saw two women attempting to leave without paying. She was beaten badly. She couldn't work for 2 months. There was no police involvement, no help from the employer. She left with 6 months post-traumatic stress disorder. No one cared. Muriel, I'm so sorry that that happened to you and your partner and your family. That is grim. And I think it raises the issue once again about why tackle these people, why have an issue. And someone's actually sent me a video of someone in a shopping centre recently in the last few days who was apprehended by store detectives. The police came along and let them go. So why are shoplifters not actually just lifted themselves? I want to talk now about the migration situation in the country. Channel migrants arriving at record speed under Starmer. We know there are 50,000 of them. Now that's at a higher rate than under Boris Johnson or Rishi Sunak or indeed any other Prime Minister. Also, one of the government ministers has said, Dame Diana Johnson again, has said that it's nothing to do with them. It's an inheritance from the Conservatives. Even though it's worse than under the Conservatives, it's apparently not Labour's fault. Also, one illegal migrant had a live stream, a step-by-step channel crossing. He says, my dream was to come here, and of course he is sending that from a 4-star asylum hotel. We also have the Shadow Home Secretary who went to Calais and had a knife pulled on him. We'll talk about that in a second. Henry Bolton's with us. He's an international border control expert, Social Democratic Party spokesman for Foreign Affairs, Defence and Security. Henry, this is getting much, much worse.
It's going to continue to get worse as well, Peter, as long as
the government doesn't address the fact that the United Kingdom is an attractive destination for these people. People don't travel to somewhere, legally or illegally, unless they are compelled to do so, they are forced to do so, or because they want to do so. And in this case, they want to come forced. And people, they will continue to come. And, the government has singularly failed to do this. The same for the previous Conservative government. But it's absolutely now the responsibility of the present government to act on this. There's no point in pointing the finger at who was to blame. Yes, we should learn lessons, but it's for this government to decide and to act. And it's this government that's failing to do so. And in fact, when we look at the numbers increasing, there are a number of factors, not all of them within the government's control, but the government said that they would close the hotels. Fine. A lot of people were demanding that happened. I urged caution, because what I was saying was, look, that's well and good. We should close the hotels, but we have to know where we're going to accommodate these people if we close the hotels. What's happening now is that more and more people, these asylum seekers and illegal immigrants, are being accommodated in communities, in social housing, in affordable housing and so on, being taken over by local councils around the country. So the message is now going back, all the way back down the chain to sort of migrants who are wondering whether or not to come to the UK or not, that actually this is getting better. It's no longer military barracks so much. It was hotels, not ideal. We didn't have full freedom of movement, security on the door. But now they're actually going into the community. They're living as ordinary people, effectively. So the message is getting clearer and clearer that the United Kingdom is an attractive place. So, this is the problem. What we should be doing is detaining every single one of these people behind wire. We don't know who they are. I defy anybody to guarantee that they know the background of every single one of these people. Yeah. So there's a threat there of all sorts. They need to be detained until such time as either we can remove them or they ask to go back to whence they came.
Tell me as well your reaction to the fact that the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp went to one of these places in Calais, went to one of the migrant camps and had a knife pulled on him.
Yeah, there have been repeated. There have been frequent stabbings and shootings in those camps. Those camps are comprised of people who do not come from a European culture, and I don't have to judge that. It's simply different. Now, I have lived. And
there are people in the European culture who stab and shoot as well, Henry.
And I certainly don't and if you put people in those sort of conditions and you are. And you allow gangs to evolve, and you're going to have fights. You're always going to have it. But I do fear that we are the thing that we're still not talking about is that people are coming into this country and attempting to come into this country, waiting to come into this country, approaching the North French coast with the intention of coming to this country, who fundamentally come from cultures that are very different to ours, where violence is a very different sort of tool, where misogyny and violence and oppression of women is rife, commonplace. There are all sorts of cultural differences which we're not addressing. And so inevitably, we're going to have a problem. And this isn't just my opinion. I worked for 3 years as senior advisor to the Secretary General of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, 57 countries. A mini United Nations, if you like, but deals only with preventing conflict. And one of the elements of that was fundamental building blocks was human security. And it was understood that when you mix cultures too rapidly without integration, you have conflict. You have friction leading to conflict and confrontation. And in this country, we're not talking about that. The government is not even acknowledging some of the problems that it needs to be addressing. So, I despair, to be quite honest, Peter. The solutions are there, but we've got a government that shirks its responsibility, puts everything down to the weather. I'm sorry. No, you are the government.
Yeah,
it is
they've got to take responsibility, Henry, and they're not doing that. They're blaming the last government. And at what stage, at what stage do we actually hold them to account? Well, I would say a year is a reasonable amount of time to get something sorted, or at least look as if it's moving in the right direction. We've seen arrests down on this. We've seen gangs unsmashed. So there's an awful lot more to do. Henry, thank you. That's Henry Bolton there, who's an international border control expert. Thanks also to Julie Dolan, who on Twitter, who says has sent me the AccuWeather app for London, saying that it's marvellous and beautiful and lovely, 26 degrees, but the rain will apparently end in 43 minutes. So there we are. Well, actually, it's less than that now, because that was from a little while ago. Also on shoplifters, loads of people getting in touch about this. Philip says, afternoon, Peter, I work in retail. We are told by management we cannot chase or confront shoplifters. We try to prevent by watching them and making our presence known. But once they know we can't touch them, they keep coming back again and again. There is no deterrent. Where have we heard that before? Lots more to discuss. We'll do so in just a minute here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lots about the weather and indeed shoplifting as well. Lydia has been in touch and says the BBC app says it's sunny in Medway and will continue until sunset, despite the fact it's been cloudy most of the day. Then when I check, the Weather Channel app says it's going to rain in the next couple of hours. Mark in Somerset says it's not worth getting involved with a shoplifter in today's Starmer's Britain. The police will come down on you if you hurt a shoplifter. It's just not worth it, and it's not our job, it's the police's job. Also, Michael says if security guards are advised not to challenge shoplifters, what exactly is their role? Well, I suppose it's a deterrent role as well, but are they actually deterring anything? I want to talk now about the jobless benefits claim. It's up by 1 million since Labour came to power. A significant minority of them, I think it's 46%, don't have to look for work at all. Now, some of them, of course, perfectly legitimately gaining benefits. But what does that say for our economy? It's a really, really significant issue, and we're going to talk about it now with Sir John Redwood, who is the former Conservative Cabinet Minister. Good afternoon, John.
Good afternoon, Peter.
I just wonder, in regard to these numbers, are you surprised that it's so many people? It's up 1 million. We now have 8 million people on universal credit. Nearly half of them, 46% of all universal credit claimants, are not expected to do anything to prepare for or look for work.
Yes, these are worse figures than I would have expected. I thought they were deteriorating. We saw the run-up to the last budget, crash confidence, put business people off investing, made people defer purchases ahead of possible tax rises. And then, of course, we saw the big tax attack on small business, on farmers, and above all on people employing people through national insurance. Vacancies plunged, recruitment was cancelled, and so there were bound to be more people on benefit. But what there shouldn't be, Peter, is this sudden enormous surge in people who want to be on benefits for life, who say they can't go back to work. And a lot of them are really quite young. And where they have mild mental health conditions, they shouldn't be put on the permanent sick, because very often getting a job and getting a purpose in life is part of the cure.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I actually know someone who is about 20 years old who's had mental health problems, who really wants to work, who wants to get back to work, but she's been told, no, you're on these benefits, stay where you are, you'll be better off as a result. I mean, this is a really, really serious issue for our economy, and there'll be loads of people who don't work, and of course the people who do work are being taxed at the highest level since the Second World War as a proportion of what the country makes, and there are proposals, or at least speculation, that taxes will go up further in the autumn budget because there is, according to some economists, a £40 billion black hole.
Yeah, well, that's a doom loop, Peter. I mean, we saw the damage that the threat of rising taxes and then the actual big increases in taxes did to the economy. Unemployment shot up from 4.2% to 4.6%. Vacancies plunged badly. Many more people were not going to get better paid jobs. Labour say the right things. I mean, they say, look, we need to promote more people into jobs. They say they want better pay and higher productivity in jobs. Of course, that's exactly the way to go. The best way to get a better paid job is to start off with a not very good job and work your way up in the organisation. Get the employer to help you and get behind you, and you can demonstrate you're worth it. And that's how to build a career. But Labour isn't doing this. Everything they do, Peter, in the last year economically has been damaging to industry, damaging to jobs, energy prices through the roof, so we can't make things that require a lot of energy, literally banning things. So they're banning our oil and gas and not letting us create jobs, get that out of the ground, banning the making of petrol and diesel cars that people still want to buy, which we're pretty good at. The combination of bans, taxes, and the attack upon enterprise and success is now becoming lethal. And then you get the doom loop. And if they do it all over again in another budget with big tax rises, far from solving their budget problems, they'll make them worse. Because what will happen is there'll be even less growth, or there could even be a recession. They'll get less revenue in. They'll have more people needing benefits because they can't get a job. And the country is really in a huge pickle.
What do you think about these proposals in regard to inheritance tax? Many people would argue, I would say, that's something that they haven't earned themselves, but the money has been taxed already.
Well, I agree with that, but I think there's another compelling reason why it'd be silly to have another pop at the better off and the rich. They tried that in the last budget, and they discovered that 10,000 millionaires left the country, and some of the richest people of all, the billionaires who've been creating jobs and investing and creating companies here, have simply walked out altogether. So instead of getting more money off the rich, if you drive enough of them abroad, away from Britain, you get less money. Now, I quite agree that the rich have got to pay the bulk of the taxes. That is exactly what they're doing at the moment. If you try and crucify them and hold them out for particular opprobrium, they will say, I don't have to live here. There are lots of other countries around the world offering much better tax deals now that people might like to live in. So please, government, don't drive any more wealthy, successful, better off people out of the country. They're even driving out some of the young talent that hasn't made its fortune yet, but reckons it's going to and reckons it can earn decent money. And those people don't want to hang around if the country is deeply jealous and tries to stop you enjoying the benefits of your success.
John, thank you. That's Sir John Redwood there, the former Conservative Cabinet Minister, giving his analysis on the economic news of the day. Some breaking news now on the Manchester Arena bomb plotter Hashim Abedi. He has been charged with 3 counts of attempted murder after 4 prison officers were injured at HMP Frankland in County Durham in April. Counter-terrorism policing North East say, we remember that incident from back then, and that is the breaking news that the Manchester Arena bomb plotter Hashim Abedi, he has been charged with 3 counts of attempted murder after 4 prison officers were injured at His Majesty's Prison Frankland in County Durham in April. Counter-terrorism policing North East has said. If there's any development on that between now and 7 o'clock, of course, we will bring it to you. Lots of people getting in touch about the weather. Thank you to David in the North Cotswolds. He says it's a glorious 28 degrees there. He says, the best weather forecaster I've ever known was our gardener, Juan, when we lived in Malaga. One glorious summer morning, he said there will be rain in the afternoon. Sure enough, there were freak downpours that afternoon. I asked what his secret was for knowing it was going to rain. He said it was on the telly this morning. Thank you to the person who says, you know nothing of meteorology. Everyone knows why the forecast changes. The night shift at the Met Office and play cards to see how it will go. Mick in Wallington says, back in the day, very few shoplifters or criminals were bailed. It was court next day and the officers presented the case. All was well until the lawyers could see an opportunity to dominate and get rich. Why can't we have night courts for pleas, etc., to speed up the process, says Mick. Tracy says, Peter, it's 32 degrees and sunny and warm with an 8-mile-an-hour breeze in Ilkeston. I quite like a bit of your rain at bedtime. That's Tracy. Ilkeston, I'm fairly sure, is in Derbyshire or Staffordshire. I know, certainly working for BBC Radio Derby, that Ilkeston was a place that I went. Thank you to Zara, who says it's 25 degrees here in County Armagh, bright blue skies. I feel like an unfortunate dairy milk bar left in the cup holder of a locked car. Well, I'm going to County Armagh actually not too many days from now. I'm taking a short holiday there to see my parents, so perhaps the weather will be much better than it is here in London. We're going to talk about events in the Middle East in just a second. We'll go to talk to Elon Levy, who is a former Israeli government spokesman, because the Gaza talks need to focus on releasing the hostages all in one go, says Netanyahu. There can't be a deal for a few of them. That has been the case so far with many of these, and Israel is of course bombarding Gaza City. The UK, various allies demanding action against what they call an unfolding famine there. We'll talk to Elon Levy, who's a former Israeli government spokesman, in just a second here on Talk.
Forest has actually already got 2 hotels within the district, so we've argued quite strongly that we've got more than our fair share, and we're having to pay the burden for this illegal immigration crisis. So it may be that the government move them elsewhere, and I'd be sorry for whatever community they move to, and obviously the government need to come up with a more efficient and effective solution to dealing with this crisis and really get a grip. But ultimately, as a council, it's our duty to stand up for our community. The hotel is completely untenable.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much for your company here on Talk Drive. We're going to talk now about the Middle East. Elon Levy is a former Israeli government spokesman and joins me now. Elon, good to talk to you this evening.
Hi, Peter.
Hi there. There seems to be a move from the initial plan, which was a 60-day truce and partial release of living hostages, was the kind of plan, to now a comprehensive deal to release all the remaining hostages, who of course have been in horrendous conditions, held captive by Hamas terrorists. We know as well that the big operation to take all of Gaza may not happen until October. The idea would be to prevent that actually needing to happen. How realistic is it, do you think, that some deal may be done?
I think Netanyahu wants to end the war, and he wants to end the war by winning the war. And winning the war means achieving the goals of the war, which are bringing back all the hostages, removing Hamas from power, and disarming it. I think there's an understanding that it's going to be impossible to reach a temporary truce because Hamas isn't interested in one. Even the US mediators said they were not negotiating in good faith. A few weeks ago, we saw, just when it looked like the sides were close to a deal, international pressure on Israel that encouraged Hamas to harden its demands, and the talks collapsed. You know, Marco Rubio, the US Secretary of State, said last week the talks collapsed the day Macron announced that he would recognize a Palestinian state, which Hamas is seeing as a victory. And then when Keir Starmer said he would recognize a Palestinian state if there's no ceasefire by September, well, I mean, he just gave Hamas every reason to continue the war and refuse to end it. So I think Israel now wants to get a comprehensive deal that is going to end the war. But what's the problem? The whole world says Hamas must give back the hostages, right? The whole world is saying Hamas must give up power, right? The whole world is saying Hamas must disarm, right? So what's the problem? Well, Hamas doesn't want to do any of those things. Hamas is a jihadi movement that is committed to the destruction of the state of Israel. It is an armed movement. That's its raison d'etre.
Yeah, there's a lot of opposition, not just internationally, but also within Israel, to the approach that Netanyahu has taken. We've seen a lot of hostage families, for example, taking part in demonstrations against the plan for an all-out assault in October. I just wonder if he is, I mean, Netanyahu famously is someone who holds firm and does whatever he wants to do. Is he reacting to internal pressures in Israel? Is this more about the international situation? Because the October plan, or the plan that may happen by October, the idea is to avoid that. Everyone wants to avoid that, of course. An all-out assault would not be good for Israel, and it certainly wouldn't be good for Hamas, not that I want it to be. But we're in a situation, surely, where he is reacting to at least some extent to internal pressure.
Yeah, many of the hostage families want, I mean, pretty much all of them, they will want their loved ones back, right? And so many of them will be saying, just pay whatever price you have to pay, give Hamas whatever it's demanding in the negotiations, and we'll go back to attacking Hamas later. And that's a very popular position in Israel that says, let's get the hostages back now, and we'll attack Hamas later. The problem is that Hamas is keeping the hostages as leverage to survive the war that it started. It is holding onto those hostages as a guarantee that it can remain in power in Gaza to plot the next October 7th massacre, to plot the next hostage-taking crisis. So I think everyone needs to be really honest at the moment that the situation is impossible, and Israel has no good choices, and it's choosing only from impossible options. Because what ending the war and leaving Hamas in power would mean is that Hamas is able to exploit all the concrete that goes into Gaza, all the humanitarian aid, to oppress the people of Gaza, to rebuild its war machine and prepare for the next war. And Israel needs to be ready to deter that and prepare for that. That would be the cost of ending the war. And so that's why what Israel wanted was a temporary ceasefire, save at least half of the living hostages and the dead bodies for burial, and then give diplomacy a chance for Hamas to step down, disarm, and leave power. The problem is we've seen international pressure going in the wrong direction, because international pressure on Israel to end the war is giving Hamas every reason to extend the war. When there is international pressure on Israel, Hamas enjoys that. It sees that as a vindication. One of the leaders of Hamas said last week that one of the great achievements of the October 7th massacre and sparking this war is that we've made Israel look really bad in the international media. They see that as a victory. So anyone around the world who wants to put pressure for this war to end needs to pressure Hamas to do what the whole world is demanding it do. Yeah. Release those poor hostages and disarm so they can never start another horrible war and take hostages again. Just finally, Elon, I wonder what your thoughts are in regard to the international reporting of the journalist, I use the term loosely, Anas al-Sharif. I have been absolutely holding my head
in my hands at the number of organisations that have been simply accepting at face value that this person was only a journalist, when the overwhelming evidence, which has been put forward by many, many people from many different organisations and privately and other journalists around the world, makes it really clear that he was at the very least in hoc to Hamas, if not a member of Hamas.
Yeah, I mean, you're putting your head in your hands. I'm tearing my hair out. Israel is saying this man was a Hamas militant. It is declassified documents it found in Gaza showing he was in Hamas's armed wing. But even if you don't believe that, there's more than enough evidence online showing him being very chummy with Hamas members, Hamas leaders, which means at minimum, this guy was not an impartial journalist. Now, look, we've seen this number doing the rounds, 200 journalists killed in the war in Gaza. At least 30 of them are confirmed combatants who are dressing up as journalists. I mean, there are images of them holding guns, using weapons. They were active combatants. And many more of those work for Hamas media. Go to the list provided by the Committee to Protect Journalists, and you will see that at least 1/3 of them work for Hamas or Islamic Jihad affiliated media, according to the Committee for the Protection of Journalists' own list. Now, I don't know about you. You cannot be a member of Hamas and a journalist at the same time. Yeah. You can't be controlled by, directed by, funded by, doing the bidding of Hamas and a journalist at the same time. And I think they're doing a terrible disservice to real journalists, because the fact is, in Gaza, there is no free press. And the only journalists who do try bravely to speak up against Hamas end up getting death threats and tortured by Hamas. That's the reality.
And now Israel has decided to let journalists in, which I think is exactly the right decision. Elon Levy, thank you very much. He's a former Israeli government spokesman. Thank you for joining us on Talk. Security guards and the fact that people have been not confronted in regard to shoplifting. We've been told by a police and crime commissioner that it's up to us to confront people who are shoplifting. Carl is in Nottingham. Carl, I think you are a security guard, or you were a security guard?
I am, yeah. I work for a well-named supermarket. I won't say it, but Tappy Pocket.
Sure, that's fine, yeah.
Yeah, the problem's just rife up and down through all members of society, whether they be, scumbags, if we're allowed to say it.
You are allowed to say, you're certainly allowed to say it on this programme. Carl, I just wonder, what are you actually told in regard to what you can do? If you see someone nicking something in the shop, what are you allowed to do, what are you not allowed to do?
Honestly, I was sort of chucked in at the deep end and not really told a great deal, pretty much other than stop them.
Okay.
You use your own judgment on that sort of thing. Obviously, you've got to make sure you are 100% certain, so you check your cameras, double check. You don't want to be stopping people when they haven't done it, so you have to be certain. The problem comes when you are 100% certain, they're already out the door.
Yeah.
They've already gone. So
they're swift, yeah.
Yeah, there's a risk of getting it wrong.
And have you ever tackled anybody? Have you ever sort of physically tackled someone to stop them getting out the door? Is that something you're allowed to do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just part and parcel of how it goes. You grab the item rather than them, shall we say. So if there's a bag, you grab the bag or grab the trolley rather than them, because obviously then you're not going hands-on with them, and injuries can occur when that happens. So you try to avoid that the best you can.
Yes.
But it's really, if supermarkets wanted to avoid the main part of the theft, the main biggest, it's not people going in, putting stuff in the pockets, it's the self-scans.
Okay, yes.
You see it day in, day out. We call it walk-offs. They walk into it, either don't scan an item, either scan everything, don't pay, and they literally just walk out the door, or walk off. It's called a walk-off.
And can you confront people who do that as well? Do you do that?
Well, this is the problem. You can confront them if you've got enough time to catch them.
Right.
By the time by the time the till people have let you know, then they're already out the door. Yeah, they're gone.
Yeah. Do you feel you're supported in your job, Carl? Do you feel that if you were to be injured, for example, God forbid, I would never want that to happen, but if it were to happen, that your employer would support you?
No, 100% not. They'd throw me under the bus and leave me, I should imagine.
I mean, that's just not a nice position to be in, is it?
I get paid minimum wage. I work in different shifts. One of my shifts is 6 till midnight.
Yeah.
On my own. So I'm on my own. in a supermarket, I wear a stab vest and things like that. It's not standard issue. That's something that I decided to do myself.
So you bought the stab vest, did you?
Yeah, simply because, well, it makes the wife feel a bit better.
How much did you pay for the stab vest?
I got it off a well-known auction site for like 50 odd quid.
Yeah, but still, you had to pay for it yourself.
Yeah, I suppose I'd say, that's your own choice, which it is my own choice.
Yeah, of course. Does your wife must worry about you doing that job and knowing there are people out there who would do you harm?
Yeah, she does. That's another thing as well, is you have an interaction with a person for thieving, whatever, homelessness, either way. You have an interaction and you do worry about the retaliation that might happen.
Well, listen, Carl, thanks for talking to us. I wish you well. When's your next shift? Is it tonight?
I'm on holiday for a week at the moment.
Oh, well, I hope you enjoy your holiday. And when you go back, I mean, that's dreadful to hear that Carl feels so unsupported and that he has to buy his own stab vest as well. What are your thoughts on this? What are your own experiences? Let me know. Give me a shout, 0344 499 1000. We'll talk more about this after the break here on Talk Drive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, this is Drive. It's just gone 5 o'clock. Thank you so much for all the comments and calls that are coming into the building. There's loads to discuss, including whether the public should stand up to shoplifters. A policing chief says that's what they should do. It's not up to security guards, it's not up to the police themselves always necessarily, and the public should stand up to them too. What do you think? Also, Labour has told shopkeepers to not put expensive items at the front of their shops. Police are also to reveal identity of suspects after cover-up claims. We'll talk, you know I'm a great animal lover. My cat Jack is my best mate. He's a great animal, and I'm really dismayed to see a story about a cat shot 5 times in Liverpool as an air rifle attacks are increasing, and the RSPCA is urging pet owners to be vigilant following a surge in shootings. Horrendous. We will talk about Zelensky holding a call with European leaders and Trump ahead of the Putin summit on Friday, and we'll take your calls this hour as well, so get them in now. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We'll also talk about Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary. He has been threatened with a knife in Calais. He's also saying that the French police are actively facilitating illegal immigration. We'll talk about that. What do you think about all these stories? And would you confront a shoplifter? Maybe you have before. We spoke to a shoplifting expert, in fact a security guard in a major supermarket a little bit earlier on. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. You can follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring on the main number 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss between now and 7 o'clock. Stay with us here on Talk. Well, Chris Philp is the Shadow Home Secretary. I've interviewed him a number of times on my programmes. He's just posted on social media that he has found French police actively facilitating illegal immigration. He took footage of what he says is police officers, likely UK funded, we give them £500 million a year, let's remember, to the French, ushering illegal immigrants onto a public bus to take them towards boat embarkation points. Let's take a look at the footage he recorded in northern France. This was about an hour or so ago. Chris Philp is currently in northern France. Let's take a look at this footage.
So what we can see here is a large group of illegal migrants being shepherded onto a public bus. French police, as you can see, are present and they are heading towards embarkation points where illegal crossings of the channel will happen very shortly. These people are going to probably be at a hotel somewhere near you soon. This is a symptom of the complete inactivity by French law enforcement, and it's a symptom of the Labour government's total loss of border control. It's happening right now, right behind me.
That's Chris Philp there, the Shadow Home Secretary. Well, Danny Shaw is a police and crime and justice commentator, former advisor to the current Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. Danny, this is pretty stark, isn't it? You've got the Shadow Home Secretary there with his camera phone, seeing there people being ushered onto buses, heading towards boat embarkation points. The French police don't seem to be doing anything there other than perhaps even helping.
Well, the footage looks concerning, I would say that, Peter, but I mean, I would want to see the full story of that. I can't quite believe the French are going to put migrants on a bus and take them to the points.
I don't think the police are doing that. I don't think the police are doing that themselves. I don't even think that that Chris Philp is saying that. He's saying that they're ushering illegal immigrants onto a public bus to take them towards boat embarkation points. And what we can see there is something that shouldn't be happening.
Well, let's see what the French police say about it, because I'm sure your producers and others will be finding out the story from them. I'm slightly sceptical. I'm sorry to say it. I'm slightly sceptical about Chris Philp's videos, just as I have been about one or two of those from Robert Jenrick. So let's see the full story. That's not to say that the French police shouldn't be doing more and shouldn't be stopping more of the boats from leaving French shores to get to the UK. I think they should be doing more, and I'd like to see that new law that we said was going to be in place, whereby they were going to go into the waters and try and get people to come back. I'd like to see that in place, but I'll just sort of hold fire on Chris Philp's claims just for the moment.
I mean, why are you sceptical, Danny?
Just because it would suit his political ambitions and aims to try and ramp this story up. And secondly, I just think, you know, if the police are marshalling people for some reason, there must be something behind that we don't know about. Peter, I'm just sceptical about people posting clips in general when you don't know the full picture. And I'm not going to sort of back down from that. I'm just very sceptical about things.
That's okay. You're entitled to your opinion, Danny. Absolutely. And you know, it's good to involve your critical faculties and have critical thinking about what politicians do. We shouldn't just accept everything at face value. I totally get that, Danny. I'm not criticising you for it necessarily. I just wonder what you make about the police and the fact that they're going to reveal the ethnicity of suspects after all of these different. I mean, it's another aspect which plays into the two-tier justice element of things, that sometimes we're told the ethnicity and background of suspects, sometimes we're not. Now there is advice from the College of Policing saying that they want to ensure that there is, certainly for serious, very serious crimes, obviously all crime is serious, but the most serious crimes, that there is some level playing field in this regard.
Well, let's be clear what the guidance says. The guidance doesn't say anything about people who've been arrested. It makes no mention of people who've been arrested. And a couple of the recent cases that have caused alarm after a suspect has been arrested, when rumours and misinformation and gossip and have circulated online. And so the guidance is not going to change that. All police will say when someone's arrested is to say their rough age, maybe a man in their 30s, and from a rough location from the London area or from the Huddersfield area, or wherever it might be. That won't change. This applies to on charge, and it still leaves it to the discretion of local forces to decide whether they should release the nationality or ethnic status of someone. And because it leaves it to local forces, and there are 43 constabularies, as you know, across England and Wales, I still think we're going to get inconsistencies. As we've seen, you get Merseyside police saying that the man who allegedly carried out the the drive-by incident involving the parade of football supporters back in May, that Merseyside police said it was a white British man from the Liverpool area. And then a few days later in Leicestershire police, there was an incident involving a car allegedly driven into pedestrians, and Leicestershire police did not disclose.
Surely it would make sense for there to be.
Going to get inconsistencies.
Surely it would make sense for there to be some consistency in that, because that's exactly the example that I was dealing with. I was on air actually when that Leicester incident happened, and you think, well, they did it in Liverpool. I can see why they did it in Liverpool. I understand that, but there'll be lots of people who will say, well, if you do it for one, you've got to do it for all. Surely that should be the guidance.
Absolutely. The guidance isn't strong enough. The guidance is weak, in my view. The guidance it amounts to recommendations and then a checklist that chief constables can use to decide whether they should release nationality or ethnic status. And what it should be saying is, in all cases where someone's charged and you're going to publish information about the charge, say what the ethnic status and the nationality of that individual is, unless there are exceptional circumstances. For example, if identity is going to be an issue at a trial, then obviously you may have to withhold information that could lead to prejudice that trial. But otherwise, release it all, because once you get this information out into the open, it will stop being such a toxic and misleading debate. We can have a real discussion about whether there are links between certain crimes and certain nationalities or certain people's ethnic background. But until then, you're going to get inconsistency. One force doesn't do it. It'll be, why aren't you saying that? Why aren't you telling us? And that's exactly what we've had until now, and we don't want that. So I'm afraid this guidance is interim guidance. I hope that those who are involved in it will reflect and in a few months, when they publish the full guidance, will beef it up.
On that, we completely agree, Danny. I just wonder, on shoplifting, there are so many stories out at the moment. There are so many problems. Shoplifting is on the increase, and Labour has told shopkeepers, don't put expensive items at the front of your shop. Isn't that just a bit patronising?
It is, and it's a sad reflection, really, of where we are with shoplifting, which has sort of become an epidemic. I think it's taken law enforcement by surprise over the past couple of years, how it's sort of exploded and become a trend. And it's not really the right answer to tell people to put expensive items somewhere else or behind a cabinet. I mean, the right answer is to actually use facial recognition technology, and some supermarkets and other stores are using that quite effectively. To ensure that police respond more effectively to incidents, to try and round up the repeat perpetrators of shoplifting and to get more of a neighbourhood policing presence, which is, I think, something that Labour is trying to do. But I think telling people not to put expensive items at the front, even though that's what some shopkeepers might want to do, is probably not the right advice at this point.
What do you make of the speculation that David Lammy could face a hefty fine for illegally fishing with the US Vice President J.D. Vance on his trip recently? I wonder whether that will happen or not, or whether this is just a bit of mischief making.
I think someone's fishing for a story there.
See what you did there? See what you did there? Yeah, no use carping about this, etc. Yeah, they're calling us, etc.
Yeah, I think look, the fishing bylaws is not my subject of expertise. I've got to say, Peter, I have no idea what will happen with David Lammy, but there are more important things going on in the world right now for him to concern himself with, I'm sure. I think there probably are. Danny, thank you very much. That's Danny Shaw there, the police and crime justice commentator and former advisor to Yvette Cooper. James McMurdoch, who was a Reform MP, he's lost the whip, and he has now put a statement out just in the last little while saying the Parliamentary Commissioner for Standards has cleared him of any wrongdoing. There was a large report, I think it was in the Sunday Times actually, about his financial affairs, especially during lockdown, and different grants that he had received and money he had received from government, or allegedly received from government. I would like to thank the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority, says James McMurdoch, the Commissioner and his office for their diligent and professional work. In addition to the above, I've spoken to and worked with other government agencies. I can confirm there is no other investigation that I'm aware of that requires my support. This was a malicious attack, he says, without substance, designed to damage my reputation. It has failed. I will continue undeterred, as I have since the day of my election, to dedicate my energies to being the best parliamentary representative I can be for my constituents in South Basildon and East Thurrock. I would like to share my gratitude to everyone who sent me kind messages and to my constituents who have been overwhelmingly generous in their support. That is James McMurdoch, the MP for South Basildon and East Thurrock. He has tweeted this out and said, "Witch hunt over." So that is James McMurdoch. We're just about to ask Reform UK, we're in the process of asking Reform UK whether James McMurdoch will now be a Reform UK MP again. We know they've fallen out with Rupert Lowe, and I think the likelihood of him being a Reform MP is zero. But will James McMurdoch be invited back into the fold? We will find out from Reform UK. We've asked their press operation. We'll see where we are, and if we get an answer before 7 o'clock, we will of course bring that to you. In terms of shoplifting, many people getting in touch. Stephen Millings in Belfast says, 30 years ago I worked on Oxford Street in a large store. We had a custody room to detain shoplifters. On calling the police, they would usually arrive within 15 minutes in a dedicated Ford Transit with a special police shoplifter team. Sad things have changed so much. Another person says, Stu in Wimbledon says, I've pretended to be a store shop detective and walked people back to pay. It's not hard, but I did choose my thieves carefully. Another person says, universal credit now the highest ever. At last, something the UK truly excels at. We should all rejoice. Liam is in Plymouth and has some thoughts on facial recognition. This is another story we're covering today because it's being trialled in various areas. We heard from Danny Shaw there as well that he thinks it should be used in stores. Liam, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say about this?
Good afternoon, Mr. Cardwell. How are you?
I'm very well. It's good to talk to you, Liam. What do you think?
I just think about the facial recognition cameras. I just don't know how it's going to work, to be honest. I mean, what happens with like the religious people if you're wearing a burqa and your face is covered?
Yeah.
What happens, say, like with all these lads who it's going to probably be aimed at in London, nicking the phones?
Yeah, putting the balaclavas on.
They're all got balaclavas on. What happens when it comes to winter time? Everyone's got hats and scarves on.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a very fair point, and there are allegations that there are different ethnicities, that it's not sophisticated enough to actually distinguish between different people and so on. It's clearly a technology that's in its infancy, Liam, and I just wonder whether we're looking for the next thing to kind of rely upon, but others can very easily ignore it simply by, as you say, having a balaclava or just even a scarf around their face or a face mask.
Well, that's what I mean. I saw the other day there was a story. Well, obviously, you know, now you have to show ID to get on certain websites and that.
Yeah.
I saw there was a man, he couldn't actually get on because his form of identification looked completely different to what he looked like now, because he's got facial tattoos.
Yeah, I saw this story actually, the guy with the facial tattoos as well, yeah. And also, I mean, you know, there are people who change from your passport photo might be 9 or 10 years old. It might be very different from how you actually look now as well.
I just don't think it's going to work, to be honest. Unless the government make it compulsory that you don't wear face coverings, I just can't see how it's going to be fair.
Yeah.
It's just going to be a rise in people wearing face coverings now, to be honest, to not get caught shoplifting, and then that makes the problem twice as hard and twice as intimidating.
I think that's very, very fair. Liam, thanks for your call. That's Liam in Plymouth there. Thank you to Roger Mann. He says, what is really frightening is in spite of the obvious incompetence at all levels of this government, 22% of the electorate seem prepared to vote for them. Margaret in Birmingham says, why would Chris Philp make this video footage up? He is confirming what we all think. The French have taken 800 million quid from Great Britain and done nothing at all. Well done to Chris and to Robert Jenrick. That's Margaret in Birmingham there. So thank you for that. Lots more to discuss, including this horrible news from Liverpool about a cat shot 5 times. Air rifle attacks are increasing on animals. Dominic Dyer is going to join us in just a second to give his view on it. I would imagine it'll be the same as mine. Stop it, you horrible thugs. Stay with us here on Talk.
For the first half of the year, the number of crossings is up 48% on the same half of 2024.
Yeah.
So that's how bad the problem is getting now, and it's not. And Jackie Smith, the former cabinet minister under Tony Blair, and former Home Secretary, who's now an Education Minister and now a peer, making the argument, well, it's the fault of the last lot. Actually, the problem has got worse since Keir Starmer.
Quite substantially worse.
Quite substantially worse. 50% worse since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, we're going to talk about Ukraine in a moment or two because Volodymyr Zelensky says the US is ready to support us following a call with Donald Trump and European leaders. We'll bring you the latest on all of that in just a few minutes' time because there are quite a few developments this afternoon, and Starmer has been on a number of calls with other leaders across the world, including the German leader, Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor there. But I want to talk now about pet owners who've been warned to be extra vigilant after a cat has been shot 5 times with an air gun. This is Ronnie the cat, who was found with 5 air gun pellets in his body after an attack in Liverpool a couple of months ago. The RSPCA says there's a 30% increase in air gun attacks against cats and urged owners to be extra vigilant. Well, the indefatigable animal rights campaigner Dominic Dyer is with me in the studio now. He's chair of Nature 2030. Dominic, this is clearly a big problem. These sadistic, horrible people are going after defenceless animals.
It is a big problem, yes, and it's not just domestic animals, it's wild animals as well. So people are using, air rifles, of course, and we've got this 30% increase in this report today, and that's something that's really a big problem for cat owners and a real worry and concern for them. We have people using high-powered catapults as well, where there's no regulation and control on their sale, firing lead shot or steel bolts and killing pheasants and killing swans and attacking deer and other animals. And we've had reports of social media groups being set up by young people in particular to share some of the most horrible images of this cruelty. And there's a lot of evidence. I was speaking at Zoological Society of London Conference on Wildlife Crime, which DEFRA, the government department, hosted a few weeks ago. And there's growing concern about the connection between human and wildlife crime. The National Wildlife Crime Unit have been looking at some of the people involved in some of this. The younger people, of course, if they're doing this at a young age, could go on to be violent. Yeah. A lot of people that are involved in cruelty to animals then get involved in cruelty to people, including sexual offences and murder and organised crime. So we're saying to government, actually, you've got to take this really seriously. The people who are out there doing this are hardened criminals or people that could become serious dangers to wider society as well as animals.
It's the sadistic element of it as well, that, as you say, that brings that up, and the sharing of all of that. Social media, of course, making that easier. You mentioned a catapult there. What would the legitimate purpose of having that catapult?
Well, fishermen use them, of course, to project baits out at long distance, for example, like that. But, I used to have a catapult. I remember when I used to go fishing years ago. But, they're more powerful these days than ever before, and they can be purchased. There's no rule on who can buy them. There are campaigns now to actually say that anyone under 18 shouldn't be able to purchase one of these, and there should be restrictions on their sale, but they're extremely dangerous. And if you look at the serious cases of human harm caused by catapults, but also a lot of animal cruelty as well. Sky News did a report last year which was very horrifying about young people involved in this area.
Yeah. So if you are a young person, or if you're a parent or grandparent who suspects that there are people even viewing these videos, or even, God forbid, taking part in it, what do you think people should do? How should they deal with this?
Well, I think firstly, you need to report this as serious criminal activity, and the police take it seriously. We have animal welfare laws, and there have been 1 or 2 individuals who have gone to prison for a number of years for killing cats, for example. What I'm saying, and many others in the animal welfare movement, is that we need to apply those laws equally to wild animals as well as domestic animals. At the moment, it just applies to domestic animals.
Why are they not? Is the law just doesn't apply to?
Well, when the previous Conservative government looked at this, it was difficult. They had the shooting and hunting lobby come after them when it came to wild animals, and the hunting issues around fox hunting and things you're very familiar with, that this government to a degree says it wants to tackle. So they left the more difficult wild animal issue to one side. They did good work with strengthening, the criminal legislation for domestic animal cruelty, and you could go to prison for up to 5 years for that now. But we're also saying to government that you also need to make wildlife crime and crime against domestic animals recordable, because the police don't necessarily record it in the same way they do human crime. And unless you do that, you don't know how big it is a problem. You can't connect it to human criminal activity, and you can't show what steps the police are taking to try and deal with these criminal activities. The other thing we need to see, of course, is just longer sentences, as I said. We need deterrence, so that if people are doing this, that you can say to them, listen, you're going to get heavy fines or potentially go to prison.
It really annoys me and disturbs me that there are people who take this sort of sadistic pleasure in these things, especially when it comes to I'm a big cat person, as you know, but of course all animals should be treated with great respect. Is there a problem in society how we treat animals? Because there are so many people who dote upon their animals, who think they're, who treat them with great respect and great love as well, but then there are many people who don't as well.
Absolutely, and I think the RSPCA and other organisations are trying to do good work educating people. Schools have a role in this, parents have a role in this. If children get involved in cruelty to animals in this way, it's a dangerous path for them to be doing, of course. And as I said earlier on, we've got all this evidence to show that serious criminal activity can, lead from animals to humans. Remember the Moor murders. If you go back also to the 1960s, they started killing cats to start with before they moved on to children. children. And we've got lots of evidence of that around the world. So, you know, we should really be taking this seriously and doing what we can to stamp down on it.
Chief Inspector James Ross said it is not currently illegal to possess a catapult, but if our officers suspect one is being used to commit crime or antisocial behaviour, they will not hesitate to seize and destroy it. Are enough officers doing that? Are they taking that seriously?
No, and I think, you know, we took good steps on knife crime. I think the next big problem we're going to have is on powerful catapult crime.
Okay,
so I think we have to treat that equally as seriously and to take action to, you know, to restrict the sale of some of these products, particularly to young people.
In terms of animal welfare issues, is this a major one? And obviously it's very, very important, but in terms of the ones that you're dealing with all the time?
All of this is, and I said that the most important thing for us when we talk to ministers is the human connection. Because if you go in and just say it's about animals, they say, well, the police have got lots of problems they've got to deal with, lots of resource issues. Of course they have. But if we're not tackling these animal-related crimes, we're opening the door to more wildlife and also human-related crime as well. Hare coursing being a good example of where the government have, with the farmers and the landowning industry, taken tougher action against hare coursing, because it's trespass, it's intimidation, it's violence, but ultimately it's also using hounds illegally to kill hares. So there is a strong connection. Badger baiting, which is a horrible activity, where you're putting, you know, dogs down badger sets. A lot of individuals involved in that have a high rate of domestic violence to their partners, for example, and we've got more evidence coming out, and we're doing more work on that in the autumn, both in Parliament and also working with various other agencies and organisations looking at security and policing to say we've got to take this seriously.
And is that how you're going to essentially convince is the wrong word, but make your argument stronger because of that human connection?
Absolutely. And I think that's what resonates with politicians, but it resonates with the public as well. People are horrified by violence to animals. You know, we see it to alpacas, we see it to horses, we see it to dogs and cats, but they do recognise this connection with some of the individuals doing this. So I think it resonates with the public, but I think the politicians have got to wake up. To be frank, a lot of the police officers and people that we work with in the police want to do more, but it's a matter of resources, and that's where the government needs to step in.
Dominic, thank you as always for your great expertise there and all the campaigning you do. A lot that we don't see. You've been a fantastic, you've devoted your life really to animal welfare, and I really appreciate that as someone who cares about it myself. So that's Dominic Dyer there, the Animal Welfare Campaigner, Chair of Nature 2030. Lots more to come on Ukraine as well. We'll talk about that in just a second. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to everybody who has been in touch, including Steve in Cambridge, about that story about the Foreign Secretary fishing. Cardi P, my mate went fishing. He'd done it for years. When he was checked for his rod licence, it was out of date by 2 days. He explained he always does it online, but he was fined 160 quid. 25 years of paying his licence. So what is going to happen to the Foreign Secretary, says Steve in Cambridge. Well, we'll keep you up to date with what happens. If he didn't have a licence, he should be fined at least 160 quid. There's quite a lot happening in regard to Ukraine as well. Trump says a quick second meeting between Vladimir Putin, Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump will likely follow the summit in Alaska on Friday. We don't know when that quick second meeting will actually happen. Maybe it'll be Friday. We'll see. And in the last hour, Sir Keir Starmer, our own Prime Minister, has spoken with other world leaders about the situation in Ukraine. Let's see what he has to say.
This meeting on Friday that President Trump is attending is hugely important. And as I've said personally to President Trump, look, for 3 and a bit years this conflict has been going on and we haven't got anywhere near the prospect of actually a viable solution, a viable way of bringing it to a ceasefire. And now we do have that chance because of the work that the President has put in. And as a result of the announcement that the meeting was going to take place in Alaska, we've had our national security advisors in Chevening in the UK, and I'm really pleased that Vice President Vance is on the call here because, of course, he was integral to the discussions that went on quite intensely last weekend in terms of the thinking, the shaping and the trying to make a success of what happens on Friday. So, Vice President Vance, thank you so much for joining us and thank you for the work that you put in relation to this alongside our NSAs.
Well, that's Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister. Also, just to bring you a bit more detail on what the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has said about that quick second meeting between Putin, Zelensky and him following the summit on Alaska on Friday. He said there's a very good chance we're going to have a second meeting, which will be more productive than the first, because the first is I'm going to find out where we are and what we are doing, said Trump, who has been speaking this afternoon. He's at the Kennedy Center in Washington. Trump said if the first meeting with Putin on Friday goes okay, then there will be a quick second one between Putin and Zelensky and myself if they'd like to have me there. He added there may be no second meeting because if I feel that is not appropriate to have it because I didn't get the answers that we have to have, then we're not going to have the second meeting. So clearly things are moving to some degree here. Let's get analysis from the best in the business. Simon Diggins, Colonel Simon Diggins is a military and defence analyst. Simon, at least they're talking about peace. We may not have necessarily progress, but definitely a meeting on Friday, perhaps a second one between the three men. That would be pretty significant, wouldn't it?
Peter, good afternoon to you. Yes, very much so. And I think the prospects for something happening are rather better than I envisaged even at the beginning of the week. I think there's an element of realism about this. We heard it with Sir Keir Starmer, a bunch of realism there about what can be achieved. I think the primary focus is some sort of ceasefire, stop the killing, which has been very much something that President Trump has been saying repeatedly, stop the killing. And then there's some sort of indications about what the deal might look like. And there's been various analogies, various comparisons. But essentially, it's a sort of de facto recognition of the facts on the ground. One of President Trump's spokesman, Sebastian Gorka, talked about we do reality in the Trump administration. So not some utopia necessarily, this would be painful for Ukrainians, but not a utopia whereby their borders are restored back to their 2014 position, but a de facto recognition of where they are on the ground, not in any sense conceding the sovereignty of the territory, but recognising they can't necessarily at this stage take it back.
What do you make of the fact that the relations, certainly between Zelensky and Trump, seem to be a lot better, of course, since that very fractious Oval Office meeting? Zelensky has said the US is ready to support us. That is following that call with Donald Trump and European leaders. Relations seem to be much better there between Zelensky and Trump.
I think they are, but I think part of that is a recognition on President Trump's part that he can't rely and he can't trust President Putin. I mean, he's talked very bluntly, and I hope I'm not offending anybody, talking about the being bullshitted by President Putin. We've had various other world leaders. We had former President of France, President Hollande, talking about structural lying on behalf of Putin. I think we all recognise that in this country in terms of what we hear from the Russians. But I think for the first time, and this is the big difference from what happened in that awful meeting in the White House, is that President Putin's behaviour has now been recognised by President Trump, and Trump has now adjusted how he can achieve things going forward. I think that's significant.
Yeah, absolutely. Simon used a word there that is fine in context because he's quoting it. We wouldn't usually use that word, but just to be clear to our viewers and listeners that is in context, and Simon's fine to do that because it is in context. I wonder as well about the other leaders, because Starmer, the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, for example, he says that the priority is securing a ceasefire, adding Ukraine's allies should increase pressure on Russia if it doesn't agree. What about the other countries not at the meeting, but nonetheless with a real vested interest here? And very little mention, it seems, of NATO.
No, I think that's one of the issues. I think formal mention of NATO is toxic to President Putin, and so I think that won't help the conversation along. I mean, one of the things that President Putin had as one of his war aims was not to stop Ukraine becoming part of NATO. So no mention of NATO, but other European countries, and again, he's talked about other European countries not being involved. But I think that's where the European countries have a duty to kind of stand up and be counted. And we know how difficult it's going to be to try and produce a sort of stabilisation force, even at the very low numbers that have been talked around 10,000, which is significantly less than the original thinking, around 200,000. But I think NATO countries, or the European countries who are part of NATO, now have an absolute duty to try and do that as well. It won't be easy. They've got their own problems in terms of their economies, own problems in terms of building up their own defences. But I think it's essential for Ukraine to have any kind of confidence whatsoever that this peace might hold, is that the European countries, who are the neighbours of Ukraine, are prepared to support it at this particular moment and sustain that going forward. Lots of good words, lots of rhetoric at the moment, but actually they need to know that the European countries are going to continue that support into the future.
We will, of course, cover the meeting in Alaska, in Anchorage, at the military base on Friday. What do you think a good outcome would look like, Simon?
Well, we've already got a bit of an outline for it, which is a second meeting which leads to a ceasefire, which leads to some kind of settlement. It won't be a full settlement. It won't even be necessarily a fully just settlement, but means the end of fighting, 3.5 years of fighting, tens of thousands of casualties on both sides, massive destruction to Ukraine, and some kind of stability that's sustainable for the future. That's probably a sort of dream outcome. I think for the time being, people will be happy with the second meeting, which does involve President Zelensky and perhaps other people as well, and then a ceasefire, that's a genuine ceasefire, and on the back of that, a more peaceful outcome, that, as I say, that one that can be sustained, not one that's just rhetoric, but one that can be sustained for the future.
Simon, thank you as always. Colonel Simon Diggins there, military and defence analyst. Plenty to discuss on this. What do you think and what are your hopes for that meeting on Friday? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. We'll take some of your calls next here on Talk.
for the first half of the year, the number of crossings is up 48% on the same half of 2024.
Yeah.
So that's how bad the problem is getting now, and it's not. And Jackie Smith, the former cabinet minister under Tony Blair, former Home Secretary, who's now an Education Minister and now a peer, making the argument, well, it's the fault of the last lot. Actually, the problem has got worse since Keir Starmer.
Quite substantially worse.
Quite substantially worse, 50% worse since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you to Bob in Cheltenham, who's been in touch about the problems with animals and animal welfare. He says that when police conduct domestic abuse risk assessments, one of the questions that is asked concerns whether a suspect has ever demonstrated any cruelty to animals. Such sadistic behaviour is a warning sign of the possibility of even more serious crime towards people. This is a great show, as always, says Bob. Thank you very much. Also, someone has texted in to say Starmer, Macron and other European leaders are meaningless. Does Colonel Simon Diggins really think Putin cares what Starmer thinks? Martin says, well said, Starmer, you're a minnow in world politics. More importantly, what are you going to do with regards to our own borders being invaded? That is Martin in Gillingham, who says he's 71 years old. Well, thank you for that. Alan is in Salford and has been in touch about facial recognition. 0344 499 1000 is the number that Alan has called. Alan, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good evening, Peter.
Good evening, hi.
Well, I'm just saying this facial recognition cameras, they've had them for over 10 years and they've been using them on us for years. But the police are saying they're going to use them now.
Yes.
Well, we've got many thousands of hours of CCTV of people being robbed in the streets and the rest of it. And what did you do? They do nothing.
Well, it's really interesting you should mention that, Alan, because I don't know if you know Mike Neville, who's on our shows every now and again, the copper, who former copper Mike. He said that, you know, when he was working in the Metropolitan Police, he was a detective in the Metropolitan Police about 10 years ago, and he said that, well, he was working 10 years ago, he says he really wanted more facial recognition technology to be used, and there was a resistance against it, and now it's being seen as something that can really help. Now, obviously, the technology will have advanced during the last 10 years, and there are worries that people say, you know, people can cover their faces or that it's maybe not that accurate, but I think I'm with you, Alan. I want all the different tools to be used in order to catch criminals.
Well, it's just excuses for me, I'm afraid. The police. I'll give you an instance now, just my instance. Last Thursday, three police officers came to my face in I live in a small block, so there's only two of us upstairs. And they've come to arrest a guy who was there 12 months ago. Now, I'd been gone 12 months, there was another couple in there, two young ladies.
So their information was totally out of date then, Alan?
Well, the wife was at the door, answered the door because he knocked on us first.
Yeah.
But I come up and they said, don't you lot communicate? Well, I was shoved off by the wife because I'm so annoyed with these police. She had to shove me off.
Probably best that she did that.
Yeah, and I said, what a joke, 12 months, and they didn't know. They come to arrest him.
Yeah, I mean it just tells you everything you need to know. I mean they're just dealing with information that's completely out of date and arresting someone there. I mean, how big is crime where you are, Alan?
Well, we'd never see a copper. This is the first three coppers I've seen. You usually see them flying past. They go to Morrison's for breakfast, you know, the local supermarket.
Yeah.
You never see police like I used to when I was a kid.
We need local officers around here. Oh, we do see a plastic policeman going up and down now and again.
I mean, in fairness, those people are often volunteers, Alan, and they do a tough job as well. But they don't have power of arrest and things. But it's interesting you mentioned that. I mean, I saw 3 coppers in my area of London where I live, and I just thought, actually, do you know what? I've never seen the police. I called the police once, 999 call, and they came out then. But apart from that, I don't think I'd ever seen police officers on my street or near my street. And of course, they were walking down to the local supermarket to get their lunch. That's what they were doing.
Oh, well, that's it. Yeah, exactly. But what I'll say about the 3 police that come, I think there was two men and a woman. So there was about 5'10", the 2 men, and the woman was about 5 foot. They looked a bit comical, actually.
She was pretty small.
But, I thought I'd have a look and see what the height regime now is in the police. We haven't got one. You've not got to be a certain height anymore in England.
Okay. Yes.
To be a police officer.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, like in rugby teams, for example, the small people can actually be the mighty ones who get the stuff done, who can actually, get in there and tackle people and do and perform well. So I'm not a heightist in that regard. I just want police officers to solve crimes.
I used to deliver to Glasgow and Scotland. Now, when I was there was always 5'11", these coppers. They were big lads, and you used to think, my God, I wouldn't like to mess with them. But
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Afraid,
well, it's interesting you mentioned that. Sorry, go ahead.
I used to have great respect for the police.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 72 now. When I was in my 30s and 40s, 50s, I'm sorry, I've lost all respect for police.
Why is that, Alan? Why is that?
Why? Because of all the stupid things they do. They go arresting, that woman for a dirty tweet and put her away for 31 months. Yet they can't get these rapists put in jail.
Yeah.
And then when they get in jail, they let them out halfway through.
I mean, with Lucy Connolly, she did plead guilty to inciting violence, but I don't think she should have gone. Be really careful about that. There's a retrial that Alan's just made a reference to, so just be really, really careful about that. But Alan, I just wonder in terms of the respect for the police. I mean, if you see a police officer out and about, do you feel safer?
No. And I don't mean to say this, but I mean it. And if 5 years ago, if I'd have seen a policeman being attacked by a gang of anybody, I'd have helped him, but not now.
Wow.
I'd leave him to it. I'm sorry to say. I know I shouldn't do. I probably wouldn't do, but
that's just how you feel. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people feel the same way. And I know there'll be police officers listening to this. There'll be families of police officers listening to this. And I want to respect the police. And I do, in many respects, respect so many people, the bobbies on the beat. But there's so much bad management of police officers. Alan, thanks for your thoughts today. I appreciate them. Bob's in East Sussex. And Bob, you might have a solution to all of these problems. What would you like to say today? You're very welcome to the programme.
I'd like to, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
I'd like to say, bring back civil defence organisations and the Home Guard.
The Home Guard, gosh, well there was a thought about that, wasn't there, a few months ago?
No one ever thinks about. There are vigilantes on the streets now, and I think bringing back civil defence and bringing back the Home Guard will give the people of Britain a lot of respect for each other. Because we haven't got a police force.
But would it be any better if you had civilians doing what the sort of Dad's Army did previously, Bob? Would it be better than what we have at the moment?
I think so, because I tell you why. The people of where I live in Sussex would respect each other even more.
Yeah.
We're losing respect because I haven't seen any illegal immigrants in Rye, but I think it would be a great thing to know that you were safe.
Yeah, no, listen, I know what you mean, and I think a lot of people feel the same way. Bob, thank you for that. That's Bob in East Sussex there. Thanks also to Max in Warwickshire. He says, Peter, Starmer makes me laugh. I wish he would spend as many hours protecting our borders here in the UK than he has spent on Ukraine's border. That's a very, very good point. And whether the Prime Minister should spend more time here, never here, Keir, of course, or else he is here. He's in Downing Street today, and he was talking about Ukraine. Well, maybe that's something that he actually should be doing a lot more in regard to our own problems and our own borders as well. He wants to be the international statesman. That is part of being Prime Minister. That is part of the job in regard to that. That's just the way things are. And actually, we can look at this clip where Keir Starmer was talking a little bit earlier on in regard to Ukraine and just remind ourselves of what he was saying there. But so many people saying, hold on a second here, Keir, maybe you should be focusing a bit more on the UK. But these are his thoughts. These are a series of video calls he's been having with other leaders around the world, NATO leaders from France, from the European Commission, for example, Ursula von der Leyen, the German Chancellor as well. Zelensky seems to be in a bit of an upbeat mood in that regard. This is what the Prime Minister said a little bit earlier on today.
This meeting on Friday that President Trump is attending is hugely important. And as I've said personally to President Trump, look, for 3 and a bit years this conflict has been going on and we haven't got anywhere near the prospect of actually a viable solution, a viable way of bringing it to a ceasefire. And now we do have that chance because of the work that the President has put in. And as a result of the announcement that the meeting was going to take place in Alaska, we've had our national security advisors in Chevening in the UK, and I'm really pleased that Vice President Vance is on the call here because, of course, he was integral to the discussions that went on quite intensely last weekend in terms of the thinking, the shaping, and the trying to make a success of what happens on Friday. So, Vice President Vance, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for the work that you put in relation to this alongside our NSAs.
That was the Prime Minister there talking to various leaders around the world in regard to the Ukraine summit. This is President Trump and President Putin are going to meet in Anchorage in Alaska on Friday. Just speaking of politicians, Chris Philp, who is the Shadow Home Secretary, has been in Calais and he's posted this video. He has been alleging that French police are actually facilitating migrants getting on public buses to go to the coast and to go on those rubber dinghies and small boats coming into the UK. This is what the Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp has been posting on his social media.
So what we can see here is a large group of illegal migrants being shepherded onto a public bus. French police, as you can see, are present and they are heading towards embarkation points where illegal crossings of the channel will happen very shortly. These people are going to probably be in a hotel somewhere near you soon. This is a symptom of the complete inactivity by French law enforcement, and it's a symptom of the Labour government's total loss of border control. It's happening right now, right behind me.
That's Chris Philp there, the Shadow Home Secretary, and quite a lot of people very, very annoyed about that. And certainly if that is exactly as described, we've had some scepticism from Danny Shaw, who is a Home Affairs commentator, a little bit earlier on. David's contacted me from London. He's given me a ring, as you can too, on 0344 499 1000. David, what do you make of this?
Well, quite frankly, I'm laughing because that leads me nicely in. I make the French 100% right. They've got rid of 50,000 in the last 12 months. Mm-hmm. Basically, quite frankly, I'll be cheering from the rooftop if we was sending them back from Dover.
So you think the French are actually perhaps doing the right thing from their perspective anyway, of getting rid of these people?
I'd be doing that if I was them. If that was the reverse way round, I'd be cheering from the rooftop.
Well, I know exactly what you mean, and I just think we're being taken completely for mugs here because we're giving them 800 million quid. They're sending people our way, and we're saying, oh, let's do a one in, one out deal, which is really 20 in, one out, even if it works. And there's no evidence yet that it has worked so far, and it will take a little bit of time even if it does, David. But
Peter, what I'd like to say is it's just unbelievable. Look, every night I watch this, night after night, we all do on the news, on GB News and all the other news channels. Let's put this straight. there may be one or two, but there aren't any small boats. Every time I see it, the border force are bringing them in, and the RNLI. Now, at the end of the day, there isn't the small. You'd never get across that channel with 50. Peter, I've been across that channel. I go across 2 or 3 times a year. I watch what happens. You'd never get across that channel. 50 of you in one of those boats. 9 times out of 10, you just wouldn't get just the wash. You'd capsize.
Well, what they do now, as well as we know, is they go to about 12 miles away from the coast, and the RNLI or the Coast Guard or Border Force pick them up as well and bring them back to the shore when they should be delivering them to France.
Yeah, 12 miles and the rest. It's more like 2 or 3 miles. Can I leave you with one comment? I've just been a very good film. It's called Children of Men by P.D. James.
I've seen it. Yeah.
It's a complete. It's brilliant. I mean, it's so depressing.
It's very depressing. It's a very stark film, isn't it?
But the thing is, what about it? The background to it all is a complete and utter breakdown of our society.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I hope I'm wrong, but it's the worst I've seen in my life. I'm in my 70s now. I've always been involved in politics, more or less. This is the worst I've ever seen anything in my life, and I just don't know what the answer is, Peter.
I know exactly what you mean. I hear your frustration. I feel your frustration. David, I feel it myself as well. And there are so many people telling me exactly the same things. I've been presenting these programmes now for basically just over 4 years, and I can honestly say it's the worst it has been in terms of people's outlook. Thanks for your call, David. I really appreciate it. Thanks also to Leslie, who's been in touch. Says, "Hi Peter, I'm sick and tired of seeing Starmer grandstanding, trying to appear relevant. He should be sorting this country out." And Grant has been in touch. Says, "It's tricky about the illegals getting on the bus purely because they have done anything for the police to act on at that point, especially as the smugglers will have told them what to say too, so that all remains legal for them at that point." I think that's probably a fair point, actually, Grant. What are they actually doing wrong in terms of getting on the bus going to the coast? It's when they come off from the coast that is the illegal act. So it'll be really interesting. I'd love to talk to Chris Philp about that. I'm sure I will have an opportunity to interview him before too long. He also talked yesterday, actually, on his trip to one of the Calais camps, about a knife being pulled. The lawlessness there is something that's very, very concerning. We're going to talk about lawlessness here in the UK. In fact, Mike Neville, the former Metropolitan Police detective, will be with me in the studio very shortly about whether the public should be standing up to shoplifters themselves. What do you think about that? Surely it's up to the police or the security guards that are there. And facial recognition, which is something that Mike has talked to me about before. When he was a police officer back in the day, that was something he wanted to be rolled out far more than it was. What do you think of all of this? We'll talk about Sadiq Khan as well, considering flexible working hours for Londoners during heat waves. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, it's just gone 6 o'clock. This is Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for all the comments that are coming in. Let's get more of you on the air between now and 7 o'clock. One thing I want to talk about is, and so many people are getting in touch about it, is shoplifting. The public must stand up to shoplifters. That is a police and crime commissioner who has said that. What do you think of that? Should it be up to the public to do it? What about the police? What about security guards? We had one of them on a little bit earlier on. Labour has said don't put expensive items at the front of your shops. Isn't that a bit patronising to store owners? We'll talk to one of them in a second. And facial recognition vans are to be rolled out across police forces in England. I know someone who's going to welcome that. He's sitting in the studio with me at the moment, Mike Neville, who we'll come to in a second. We'll talk about Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London. Sir Sadiq to you, of course, Knight of the Realm, considering flexible working hours for Londoners during the heat waves. This is the latest woke nonsense from him. And David Lammy, who is facing a hefty fine for illegally fishing with the Vice President JD Vance on a UK trip. This is after the taxi debacle a few months ago. We'll talk to them, all our guests, of course. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk about all of the things you want to talk about as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Plenty to talk about before Kevin O'Sullivan comes up. He's here between 7 and 10. But let's keep it talk, and let's keep talking here on Talk. Well, Mike Neville is with me, as I say, the former Metropolitan Police Detective. Mike, great to have you in studio. Lots to talk about today. I want to get official recognition in a second, but Paige Mengers, who is the owner of the luxury resale fashion store Phoenix Style, is with me now as well. Paige, good evening to you.
Good evening.
I'm going to get to Mike in a second, but Paige, first of all, you could tell us how big a problem is shoplifting for you?
Oh, it's enormous. This year, both of my stores were targeted one day after each other. And the men who came in were armed with tools to cut all the wires and steal all the luxury bags. And, you know, it's becoming it's not a problem. It's an epidemic. It's really, really bad. And we can't, there's nothing we can do, nothing much we can do, because these guys come in armed. They know what they're doing, and it's really scary.
So you're selling luxury fashion items, high ticket items, expensive items. You've been targeted specifically for this. What do the police do when you call them?
Well, on that occasion, they didn't come at all.
They didn't come at all.
No, they didn't. They gave us a reference number, and then I was really angry, and I went onto social media and got quite a bit of media coverage, and then they did, and now we're working with the police. So we had an incident on Monday, and the police have been great. They've come in and helped, but this is not going away, and I don't know how we can stop it. And hiding our stock at the back of the shop is not going to do it.
Well, of course, and I mean, all your stock, I would imagine, there are very few items in your stock that aren't high-ticket items anyway. So when the government says don't put them at the front of your shop, I mean, do you find that as patronising as I did, Paige?
Oh, unbelievably patronising, and it makes me so angry, because I don't think they realise what retail is about, and our high streets are dying. And if we're going to be hiding the stock that we sell at the back of our shop and locking it away, what is the point of having a store on the high street? What is the point?
Mike, what Paige is talking about there is really the experience of so many shop owners who just don't feel they're supported by the police at the moment.
No, they're not supported. I mean, even yesterday I bought some chicken goujons from a major retailer, a supermarket in the New Forest, and there was a tag on a packet of chicken goujons.
Goodness me, they're not exactly the...
This is not the handbags that Paige is knocking out.
It's not.
And I just feel sorry for Paige, because it's like any other shopkeeper. I spoke to two ladies who run a local post office and supermarket on Stoke-on-Trent, and they were saying to me that people just walk in. At one time, if you put an image of a shoplifter up on Google, you'll have somebody concealing something under their jacket. Now they walk in with a basket, they just literally walk out, threaten the ladies behind the counter, just saying, if you're to anything, we know where you live. And so it really lands towards a societal breakdown that you think, why should I pay? Because everybody else just walks out, and obeying the rules is becoming the stupid option.
Well, what about this idea that the public should stand up to shoplifters? What do you make of that?
Well, I would intervene. If I was in a shop and somebody attacked those old ladies, I would intervene. But you're asking members of the public to get involved if somebody steals some coffee or some chicken goujons or a handbag. What has that person got on them? Have they got a knife? Have they got a needle or whatever? And what I saw in London, for example, there's been a 38% increase in robberies in commercial premises. And I think what this is, commercial premises being the shops and the like, is that when shoplifters are challenged, detained, suddenly they become violent, and what was a simple theft becomes a robbery. So you've got people who you really don't know who you're dealing with. Who could bite you, could stab you, could stick a needle in you for the sake of some coffee. It's all right, Matthew Barber, the Thames Valley Police and Crime Commissioner saying this, but you can't ask members of the public. And just recently we've had a member of the public arrested because he detained a shoplifter. The shoplifter died. Now, so what support's been given to these people? It just seems ridiculous. What we need is a crackdown on prolific thieves. Very few people are stealing to feed their baby, feed their children. People are stealing to order, and if there's 1,000 thefts, it doesn't mean there's 1,000 thieves. It means there are 10 thieves doing 100 each.
Paige, what happened in your store, were you physically there at the time?
I wasn't personally, but I had members of staff there. And I've actually lost some members of staff because they were just so frightened and scared, because they came in with tools and their tools were visible. And then one of them was barricading the door. So it was really very targeted, and they knew exactly what they wanted, and they knew exactly where it was. So it was very planned, and I would never want any of my staff ever to get involved and you know, injure themselves.
Would you do you feel more confident now that it won't happen again, that the police are more on your side because of the coverage that you've received, Paige, or do you feel they could just come in tomorrow and do the same thing?
They can come in tomorrow and do the same thing, and they probably will. And we've had to now invest more money in more security. I do feel that the police have listened, because I've made such a noise, and I thank them for that. But
you shouldn't have had to have made such a. You shouldn't have had to have made such a noise, no. Paige. You should have. They should have been there to support you in the first place. You talk about more security measures. Do you have security guards in store or not?
So we've got a number of things. We've got new security on the door, so the doors are locked, and then we can buzz people in and out.
Yeah.
We have tighter security on the bags, so there's new things. Our CCTV is amazing, and that's what helped us catch the perpetrators in the first time. And then we also are building cabinets where a lot of the stock is going to be hidden away.
Yeah. Would you expect I mean, we have this police and crime commissioner saying that the public should stand up to shoplifters. Would you expect your customers to stand up to shoplifters? Do you think that's a reasonable thing to ask people to do?
No, it's utterly ridiculous. It's obviously someone who is so out of touch with what is happening on the high street and with retail in general. There's no way. We were very lucky. A lot of our customers in our stores noticed some of the getaway cars that our perpetrators were using, so they could recognize them. And that sort of help would be fine, but I would never expect anyone to go and try and stop someone coming into my store who's armed.
Paige, thank you very much for joining us. That's Paige Mengers there, who is the owner of the luxury resale fashion stores Phoenix Style. And Mike, I mean, what Paige was saying there really has echoed with so many people I've spoken to. I've spoken to a security guard this afternoon, I've spoken to retailers previously, spoken to members of the public as well. And actually, Steve in Sussex says in the Brighton lanes, to get into jewellers, they have locked doors, only let 1 or 2 people in at one time. You can check ID before they walk in, and do not let groups or suspicious looking people in at all. That's fine in the jewellers. You can't exactly do that with a local supermarket or something like that.
And this is the problem. And people, what you've got is a government who, very few of them ever run a business, so they have no comprehension that people have actually got to sell things to make a living, whether they put those goods in the most attractive parts so people do want to buy them. But the whole thing, if you look back at Theresa May's government, when they reduced this, what they call minor shoplifting, under £200, to an offence where you could just be given the equivalent of a traffic ticket, it really went wrong there because the police lost focus on it. They just didn't concentrate on that. And the thieves knew. If you're a thief, you know that somebody's you steal 5 times £199, and you're going to literally get away with it. And it is. And what it's doing all the time is the shopkeepers, like the chap in Wrexham, who was, you know, he
spoke to him last Friday.
Maybe Page should have put a sign up saying scumbags, and the police would have been quicker around there. But what you have the ridiculous situation is that the police, and there's a cartoon in the Telegraph showing that the police are almost like focusing on the wrong people. They're picking on the shopkeepers and the law-abiding, and it's really tragic to see in Britain that the law-abiding people have just lost all faith in the authorities and the police to do something about crime. It's really tragic.
Could facial recognition be the key to solving this and maybe other crimes? It's going to be at least trialled in police forces in England. I know that's something you've called up on forces to do for quite a while.
Well, I'm more towards the afterwards. After the crime has been committed, look at all the images. The police in England have hundreds of thousands of images of people committing crime that have been captured on CCTV, which has cost billions of pounds to fit and buy by shopkeepers and the like. They have an identification rate of the police of about 10%. So 90% of the people caught on those high-quality cameras, like Page described, are simply walking away. And retrospective CCTV, that after, when you've got an image of somebody actually committing a crime, most people have no objections to it. This live facial recognition is all very well to target very serious crime. Is there a child molester on the street? Is there a terrorist wandering down the street? But the fact is just scanning everybody. People are always going to question that. And the easiest way to target thieves, and this Matthew Barber from Thames Valley Police, I have told him personally, his force has hundreds of unidentified images of shoplifters which facial recognition and human super recognisers could identify. And what you do is you link them together. I linked one man to 43 crimes by CCTV images, my team. And if you do it systematically, you can get the worst and most prolific thieves and you can put them in jail. So facial recognition on the street is very, very good if we're looking for terrorists, child molesters, people who are going to commit wicked and evil crimes. But the fact that all these crimes, whether it's in a major supermarket, little shop, Page's handbag shop, are captured on CCTV. She says she's got high quality CCTV. It's the fact that
what's next.
It's what's next, and the police don't get the images, and even if they get them, they often don't. Well, 6-7% of them are identified. They have to improve that, and we could really. That's the way to crack down on prolific criminals. And then the courts have to make sure that they put them away, so there's a consequence to their actions.
Is it as straightforward as simply saying, right, we've got facial recognition technology, we're going to put that on the screen, we're then going to put the CCTV on the screen, it matches it up, and is that essentially how it works in layman terms?
Yeah, so you get an image of the thief, and the police national computer has all these mugshots. Also, you've got your local officers who know the local thieves. So most people who go shoplifting don't travel far. They're local ne'er-do-wells. You have got organised gangs who would move from county to county. And in that sense, there's a national fingerprint database, there's a national DNA database. There isn't a national database of CCTV images that we could use to crack down on those organised thieves. But many shoplifters are literally local ne'er-do-wells, and they need to not be charged with one crime, they need to be linked to 10 or 20, so when they go before the court, they can be dealt with properly and locked away.
Let me put a point to you from Simon, who says, after the incident on the tube the other day, you know, the one we're talking about where the guy exposed himself, what is the point of the public getting involved? I mean, that's a reasonable question.
It is absolutely a reasonable question, because there you had the man who was naked, you had people giving a reasonable request, pull your trousers up, there was an old man, then he refused to do so, and people looked to be doing a reasonable thing. The next thing you know, the British Transport Police are saying we want to question these individuals. So again, if you get hold of a shoplifter, you headlock him, you drag him to the floor, people are really concerned that the police will be focusing on their actions and not those of the thief. And that's really bad in this country. And with British police, and I keep saying this, used to be the best in the world. Where did we lose it? How did we come to the point where trust and confidence in the police is at rock bottom?
It's a very good point. I'd also like to ask people at home, would you stand up to a shoplifter? Given everything that Mike has said, and we heard from Paige earlier on as well, maybe you have stood up to a shoplifter. Let me know your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call, and we'll have a chat about it before 7 o'clock. In the meantime, thank you to Mike. Thanks also to Paige, who joined us a few minutes ago. Lots to discuss. Stay with us here on Talk.
When we actually look at the logistics and the technicalities of this plan, best case scenario, we will see 800 illegal migrants return to France. In return, of course, we get 800 back, and they are then a long-term cost that we have to deal with. But that is, if we're going to hit about 50,000 illegal boat crossings this year, which I think we are very likely to do so, then we're seeing about a 2% chance of individuals that are coming across the channel being those that are actually returned. This is a complete farce.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thanks to everybody who's been in touch, including a smudge in Swindon who says, Cardi P, the daft Tory Police and Crime Commissioner says everything you need to know about the recently dismissed Tory party, encouraging citizens to try to physically apprehend possible knife-carrying scumbags only increases the chance of death and life-changing injuries. When a trained security officer is told not to obstruct these people, how am I as a 72-year-old expected to challenge them? Good show as usual, says Smudge in Swindon, city where both in Swindon North and in Swindon South they both had Conservative MPs until 2024 and now no longer. Samantha says, why on earth does Sir Keir Starmer think any of the world leaders are going to take him seriously? He's an utter failure who's ruined Britain and just opened our borders, making it easy for invaders to walk in. And just finally, for the moment, from Jane, who says, I think that's so hilarious, David Lammy, and the fishing licence, even if he's too stupid to know it should have been someone advising him, once again shows how incompetent and embarrassing the rest of them are. Well, we're going to be talking about that a little bit later on, about whether he needs a fishing licence, whether he could be fined for not having a fishing licence, whether he should have been fishing in the first place. But in the meantime, I want to talk about another Labour politician, Sir Sadiq Khan, who is considering whether to give Londoners flexible working hours during heat waves. There was supposed to be another one at the moment, although it's very damp and grey and rainy outside where I am at the moment in London. This isn't just about London, of course. This is about the whole country, but the Mayor of London has launched a survey asking for feedback on a range of proposals that could appear in the London Heat Risk Delivery Plan. The consultation comes as Britain experiencing its fourth heat wave of the year, 5 regions in an amber heat alert. And options presented to respondents including flexible working hours to avoid peak heat times. Well, Bob Ward is the chairman of the London Climate Resilience Partnership. Bob, do you think this is a good idea from the Mayor of London?
Yeah, it's a good idea, and we should perhaps be clear that the heat risk strategy will not just be something that the Mayor delivers, but is meant to be delivered by everybody across London, including employers. So that's why he's asking the question. It's on behalf of everybody who has a stake in managing heat. And we have to recognise that the intensity and frequency of heat waves are increasing and will continue to increase for at least the next few decades until the world gets to net zero emissions of greenhouse gases. So if we want to be able to cope with that, and that will mean, for instance, more days in high 30s and probably low 40s degrees Celsius, we have to look at other countries that deal with those kind of temperatures at the moment and learn from them. And one of the things they do is make sure that people, for instance, who work outside in strenuous jobs like on construction and in agriculture, do not work during the peak hours of the day because it's dangerous. It's dangerous and it's bad for productivity. You don't work as well in the heat. But we also have the problem in the UK that many of our buildings, our offices and homes, are simply not equipped to deal with heat, and they overheat during hot weather. And so it's very difficult to then work productively. And the estimates are that the country loses billions of pounds every summer through reduced productivity because people are trying to work in offices that are too hot to be as productive as you need to be.
Surely some of it is just, okay, some of it is just education though, is it not? Because if you, for example, the building that I live in was built in the 1930s, to keep it cool, for example, in the early part of the day or the late part of the day, I open the windows to air it out and then keep the windows closed and keep the blinds down during the hot parts of the day. Some people don't seem to know that that's a really straightforward way of keeping a flat in an old building that's not going to have reflective sides, or it's not going to have, you know, solar panels on the top, or other methods that could be used to harness sunlight or to repel it in some way. That is just not going to happen. The windows aren't going to be different because of the building. So surely some of it is just education. I also wonder within that how realistic it is to actually say to businesses there is a productivity crisis in this country. Well, actually, your employees can't work at certain times, and you know it's fine to have, to some degree, to have flexible working if you work in an office, for example, but you know you can't exactly have people who are working as a team not working at the same time.
Yes, so what they do in other countries, of course, is that they start their working day earlier and end it later and have a longer break in the middle of the day, for instance. So those are the kinds of things you can do to try and deal with these impacts. But this is a consultation. You're quite right about behaviour change. There are still a lot of people in this country who make the mistake of thinking during the peak hours of the day that opening the windows will help, when actually all it does is let in hot air.
I wonder as well, Bob.
Keep the windows closed.
Sure. I wonder as well, Bob, if there is, the Mayor of London, for example, has brought in the ULEZ scheme. I mean, the air, for example, in many tube lines is terrible. The particles that are there, a lot of people really feel, you see people coughing. Sometimes you can feel that their particulates are very high because of they're very low down, and there isn't a way to ventilate them, for example. I mean, surely looking into that is something that it would be incredibly important, especially if people are getting to and from work, and maybe they even have an extra journey in the day if there's a larger, if there's sort of 3 or 4 hours rather than 1 hour in the middle of the day for a lunchtime.
Yeah, so Transport for London is looking at ways in which they have to adapt the tube system to deal with hot weather. A particular problem is the fact that it's difficult to get cold air down in and ventilation into many of these tube lines. In addition, as you've mentioned, poor air quality, not just in the tube, but in the city. And over the past couple of days, the air quality has been very poor in London. The combination of poor air quality and heat is a real killer for vulnerable people. The people who are most vulnerable in this weather are people with underlying respiratory illnesses, and poor air quality threatens their life even more. So we're going to have to learn how to manage this better so that our most vulnerable people, as well as healthy people, cope better with these conditions.
Okay, Bob, thank you. That's Bob Ward there, who's the chairman of the London Climate Resilience Partnership. I wonder what you think about this. So would you be happy to work different hours? Would you want to work in a different way because of the heat? Certainly, this studio, the air conditioning isn't working at the moment, and one of the very nice women who works in makeup has left this little fan for me on the desk. I'm absolutely fine for the meantime, but it can get very, very warm in here. Mostly the air conditioning works, and that's something which, of course, creates emissions by itself, but which could well be a problem. Dawn in Chelmsford says the huge increase in lawlessness and blatant unpunished shoplifting is a blight on our country. Inevitably, shoplifters will decide that it is not worth trading. The last budget crushed them. The shoplifting could finish them off. This person says, hi Peter, the shop owners should employ their own security, and whatever it costs, take it off the council tax. When the police don't turn up, it would make the council soon sit up when all shops stop paying council tax. Clive in Solihull, who says he's a Reform voter, says, as always, a great show, Peter. Thank you, Clive. I remember when we had a police force, not a police service. There's a big difference, and that is one of the many reasons this country is in so much trouble. Martin in Whitley Bay, Martin's started messaging recently, or maybe they're just getting through to me recently, and it's always great to hear from you. You always have a very, very good and great common sense, Martin, and sometimes your tongue in your cheek, so it's great to hear from you. Lammy facing a fine with Vance for illegal fishing. I'm in stitches, Peter. I can see him going the full Bill Clinton. I did not have a hook on that line. Is there a special academy for morons? I'll bet 50 quid he got a double first. Well, it's interesting you mention that, Martin. Both he and indeed Diane Abbott went to Cambridge University, so I don't know what that tells us. If you haven't, I implore you at some stage to watch David Lammy on Celebrity Mastermind. It is one of the funniest things you will ever see in your entire life. Jason says, I don't fear having a go at shoplifters. It's the police and the state I fear not backing me up when I do. Very, very good point from Jason. Thank you to Tim in Bedford. He says, Lammy didn't catch anything, Peter. Can he be done for pretend fishing? Says Tim. That's a very good point, actually. Vance caught the fish. Lammy didn't catch anything. Who is this fool? Get him off. I think possibly talking about Bob Ward, or maybe me, you don't know. That's Richard. Stephen says, I'm laughing so much it hurts. Your current guest is a net zero humorist. Just me. Gosh, it gets so hot in the summer. Who knew? Says Stephen Millings in Belfast. And Tony says, this gentleman is ridiculous. 40 degrees in the UK regularly. Come on, let's enjoy the heat. I've never heard anything as stupid in my life. Yeah, guess what? It's the summer. It's a bit warm. So Tony makes a good point there. We'll take more of your calls, and we will talk in just a second about this fishing aspect of things with the Countryside Alliance. They're going to be with us in just a second. You can get your call in too. I'll take as many as I can between now and 7 o'clock. The number, of course, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Quite a few people getting in touch on shoplifting. Thanks to everybody on Twitter. I've just been having a little look here, and Dallas, I'll read that in just a second. Anna says, one reason I shut my clothes shop in Cheshire in 2004, break-ins, middle of the night, and in the day, rush and grab as many clothes off the reel. Of course, I had more desirable stock at the front of the shop. It's part of merchandising, attracting customers into the shop, of course. Sadly, the wrong sort, says Anna. Amy says, on shoplifting, my mum works in a petrol station, and just today someone went in trying to steal a bottle of alcohol. Luckily, my mum and one of her co-workers spotted it. My mum forcibly asked for the alcohol back, and they just gave it back when they realised they had no chance. Amy, thank you for that real-world example of what's going on, and people standing up to these people as well. And Dallas is listening in Botswana. He says, Bob Ward is talking out of his hat. Here in Botswana, we regularly have temperatures over 40 degrees Celsius. Everyone just moans a bit and gets on with it. No siestas, just a normal lunch hour, just another net zero nutter, says Dallas. And Ali says, wow, I've heard it all now. Too hot to work with a few days of sun. John says, Bob needs to work in a restaurant kitchen in this weather without opening the window. I think his tune might change, says John on the Isle of Wight. George in Croydon says, there's no point in having this consultation by the Mayor. He ignores them all like he did with ULEZ. As we know, Sir Sadiq is going to do whatever he wants. And on Bob Ward, George says, Bob Ward, give me strength. Obviously a net zero enthusiast, doing a job no sane person wants or needs. Get in the bin, says George. Tell us what you really think. Let's talk now about David Lammy facing a hefty fine for illegally fishing with JD Vance. Well, we know David Lammy didn't actually catch anything. There was a brilliant tweet from someone saying that their photograph looked like a sort of pensions ad, a sort of diversity pensions ad with, you know, two gay men, one black, one white, fishing kind of thing. So it is a bit silly, but there is a serious issue here, of course, because there are many, many people who pay, you know, decent whack of cash for fishing licenses, do so legally. They were apparently not doing so. That's the allegation anyway. Mo Metcalf Fisher is External Affairs Director of the Countryside Alliance. Mo, what could and should happen here?
Well, it's always good to see you, Peter.
Hi, Mo.
Yeah, an interesting story and an annoying one in many ways, because I'm really glad that the Vice President came and took part in fishing with the Foreign Secretary. Angling is a really important activity, and we want to see as many people do it as possible. But to do it, you do need a rod licence, easily available online. The Environment Agency are really clear in their communications that they put out more or less every other day, when they remind us of who they've fined and prosecuted, that they will always prosecute if you were discovered or it's revealed that you don't have a rod license. So, you know, this is going to be a matter for them, but obviously they could open themselves up to the accusation of running a two-tier rod licensing system if they are found to drop it or be seen to kind of leave it alone. It is causing a bit of a stir in the angling community, as you can imagine. Most anglers are more than happy paying for that rod licence. All that money goes back into angling and our waterways.
How much is a rod licence, Mo?
It's not a lot of money. It's from memory, it's just over £10.
Oh, okay. So
I need to double check.
So this our producers, while we're all talking here, our producers behind the scenes are just going to check online, if that's right, just how much a rod licence is, or maybe someone could text in. So actually, these two men could have very, very easily and inexpensively, from someone who's on the salary of either the Foreign Secretary or the Vice President of the United States, have paid a tenner or thereabouts. And a fishing licence, a rod licence in England and Wales costs, actually it's a bit more than that, it's about 3 times as much. It's a £36.80 for a 12-month rod licence, but still within their certainly within their financial means to do so. Yet they just didn't. They thought they could just do it without needing to.
I think the real question is, you know, who at the Foreign Office would have been responsible for that? As I said earlier, I'm really pleased to see the Vice President here angling. I think it's going to do a tremendous amount of good. I hope it doesn't distract too much. I will say though, Peter, it's worth pointing out that as much as it looked like the Foreign Secretary was having a great time, a Labour council in North East Derbyshire actually banned angling the other day on the grounds that he wanted to create an eco-hub or a nature hub, whatever that means. No one seems to know. But angling and nature go hand in hand. And so it's disappointing that the people of Derbyshire won't be able to have the same joy and pleasure that the Foreign Secretary clearly had when he was out fishing. But that is another point. I hope that lessons are learnt from this and that it does serve as a reminder, because I'm sure there are a lot of people that don't know they do need a licence. If you go on the Environment Agency website, it actually says on there that you can get it within 10 minutes if you want it via email and text. So it's really easy to do. But one of the interesting things, Peter, is in the Sun story that broke the piece today, Jack Elsom, it states on there from a Labour source that the Foreign Secretary had then been given a licence after he admitted to not having one. But my understanding, speaking to angling professionals, is that you can't retrospectively.
You can't do it
retrospectively.
Yeah,
you have to have the licence. So I think that poses some interesting questions as
I
well.
wonder,
And as I said, a lot of anglers are going to be watching this very closely.
What's the sanction if you're caught not having a road licence? I should say as well that the normal one is £36.80 for a 12-month licence. For salmon and sea trout, a 12-month licence is £93.10.
Yes.
And what's the sanction if you can be fined, presumably, if you don't have a road licence?
You can be prosecuted and fined up to £2,500. And, we know people that have got criminal records over this. They do take it very seriously. If you look at the language that they use in their press releases, they're robust. They don't mess about. And as I said, there's been a lot of people that have been fined. So I imagine that those people will be looking at this clearly.
Do you think it's a good idea for our country to prosecute a foreign leader for not having a road licence?
I wouldn't. Look, I'm not a politician. I'm not going to be getting in a diplomatic row. I'm just a mere humble third sector employee.
Should we prosecute these two men, do you think? And I mean, if you're representing the Countryside Alliance and the angling community, presumably they'd want the law applied to anybody, whether they are a pensioner who loves going out and fishing and having a nice day fishing, but forgets to have their licence and they get fined, as someone who texted in earlier said, or alternatively the Vice President of the United States and the Foreign Secretary.
Well, again, not a risk of causing a diplomatic row. I'll leave it to the politicians to decide that. But what I would say, that I want to see the Environment Agency take it seriously, like they do with anyone else that doesn't have a rod licence, Peter. One rule for them, one rule for all. It's got to be the same for everybody. So let's see what they say. They said they're going to look at this on its merit, which again is language that we've not heard before. I don't remember ever reading anywhere else.
I mean, surely it's really straightforward. There's nobody denying for a second that these two men went fishing. They've told us. We didn't. We weren't.
It was volunteered.
It was volunteered information. The pictures were put out. They talked about it. Surely they either had a road licence at the time or they didn't. It's not about being looked into. It's just a really straightforward thing. Mo, very interesting to talk to you. Thank you, Mo Metcalfe-Fisher, their External Affairs Director at the Countryside Alliance. Ian has sent us a voice note on this. Ian, let's hear what he has to say.
Lammy getting fined is great, but all he'll do is expense his fine and the taxpayer will pay it. He won't care, whereas the whole concept is, fining people. It's just, we have fines for everything in this country and it's got too excessive now. But those in public life will just pass it on to us taxpayers, and us taxpayers, if we get fined, we have to pay it ourselves.
Couple of messages as well. Joanna in Salisbury says, hi Cardi P, so Lammy broke the law without a licence and will get a big fine and all he caught was a cold, serves him right. Another person, Leslie, says, I used to laugh at Lammy on Mastermind. Now as Foreign Secretary it isn't so funny anymore. In fact, it's tragic. Let's speak to Phil in Exeter about it. Phil, are you an angler? Are you a fisherman?
Yes, I'm the match secretary for a fishing club in Tiverton.
Oh, cool. And so you would, obviously, everybody in your club, I'm sure, has spent the £36.50 getting their road licence?
Absolutely right. And unfortunately, some people don't pay that. The Environment Agency, who should be policing this, of course, what did they do? They've got other things involved.
Other fish to fry?
It's just unbelievable. It's so sad that we have our rivers and our lakes are being decimated by cormorants and Yeah, it's just wrong.
Yeah.
We have no rule of law anymore. It's just...
and when you have this it's so straightforward. Either they had a road license or they did not when they were fishing. They told us, they gave us the information, they talked about it and joked about it and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a road licence, you should be fine. You should face the full force of the law. It doesn't matter who you are. And the point is, it can't be two-tier justice. It has to be really straightforward. Whoever you are, no matter who you are in life, you should face a fine. How much of a fine would you get, do you think, Phil? Do you know these things? Do you know about the fines?
I think these. I think the actual law is about 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, depending on the severity of these things. However, it's never ever enforced, and that's the terrible thing.
Right.
And as usual, it's a two-tier. It's really, and without being, how can I say, using the racist card, the people who tend to not have a rod license tend to not be from this country.
Right.
So I don't know how you can, justify allowing people to come into our country and, just destroy our fisheries. It's really, really sad.
Phil,
really sad.
Phil, really interesting to talk to you. Thank you. That's Phil in Exeter there. And Suze has been in touch and says, surely the sanction for fishing illegally is 31 months in jail. Breaking the law is breaking the law. Lucy Connolly found that out, and so should Lammy. I think inciting racial hatred is perhaps more of an issue than which she pleaded guilty to. Should she have? Should she not have? There's, it's a more serious crime, and there are more serious crimes than others. But I do think David Lammy should face the full force of the law, as anybody should. If you are fishing without a rod licence, that is the law. And £36.50, he can afford that. He's on a huge salary. I think he gets something like £140,000 a year. He could afford that, and not to expense it either. And Chris in Newbury says, we have two-tier Kieran now, no licensed Lammy. Like it. Will no licence be let off by two-tier? Chris, surely a future awaits you as a headline writer for The Sun. Darren has been in touch with a voice note on David Lammy. This is what Darren says.
It was only 4 or 5 years ago that Boris broke the rules in lockdown. Do you remember? And people were saying, come on, it shouldn't apply to the Prime Minister. It applied to everybody. You can't say that and not let it apply. Plus, if he doesn't get prosecuted, anyone that's been prosecuted can surely appeal and get their conviction overturned. Their ban, their criminal record. Can't have a two-tier. Is it just another freebie?
Very good point, Darren. Very good point indeed. We'll take more calls, including on this if you want to talk about it. Lots of people want to talk about shoplifting. We'll make sure we get them on between now and 7. Kevin O'Sullivan is coming up at 7. I'm going nowhere. I'll take all your calls after the break. Should say I'm doing Drive tomorrow and Friday as well, between 4 and 7, so you can join me for that. And at the weekend between 10 and 1, Saturday and Sunday. And plenty more of your calls coming up in just a second here on Talk. Stay with us.
yes, I am. And I'm going to put another one up 5 times the size.
Oh, I like the sound of him.
He's good. He's good. And, you know, you can predict the story, can't you? He's been a victim of shoplifting 5 times so far this year. And how many police turned up to help him? You know, it's excruciatingly bad judgment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Angie. He's been in touch and says, oh, for goodness sake, regarding the hot weather and working, I have to do my job whatever the weather. Nursing doesn't stop as it's the 30s like today. Aircon on in the car and the office. People really need to get a grip. And Con says, why do we have to support Lammy with the high wage he's on? Fine him the top amount, and that should be a fright to other poachers. Bob says the estate that they were fishing on probably is the licence for anyone fishing on the estate. I didn't realise that you could do that sort of for an area rather than an individual person. And both Bob and Leslie like my joke about perhaps they have other fish to fry. Leslie says, I got your joke, other fish to fry. It made me laugh anyway, says Leslie. Leslie and Bob, both of you, thank you very much. And I wasn't angling for any compliments there. Georgia has been in touch on shoplifting. She's in London and would like to have her say. 0344 499 1000, the number she has called, and you can too for the next 10 minutes with me and then with Kevin O'Sullivan between 7 and 10. Georgia, what would you like to say? You're very welcome to the programme.
Hello, Peter. Lovely to speak to you.
You too.
Yes, I was thinking about this facial recognition. I went into a store in the winter a few months ago. It was really, really freezing cold. I'm a lady of a certain age, and I put a hoodie up, which I've never done really before. And I went in, I was freezing cold, and I was told very firmly at the door that I had to remove it, please, immediately. And there was a Muslim lady standing there, fully hijabbed and completely face covered, the whole thing, and she was left to roam around freely. I've lived in
absurd, isn't it?
I've lived in the Middle East for many, many years. I love my friends. I have many Muslim friends, but I just found that really, it's kind of like,
Also, yeah. I think the likelihood of you being a shoplifter, Georgia, is probably fairly low.
Yeah, of course.
I do love these people. I mean, I remember going through airport security one day, and there was this sort of elderly couple who were in their 80s, and they had sort of everything in their luggage was gone through with a fine tooth comb, and the woman was just sort of laughing at it, and I said, well, I can tell you're obviously Al Qaeda, and she kind of just laughed at it. It was so ridiculous that you know, there are people who are likely to be shoplifters, and I would expect, Georgia, you're not one of them.
Well, I'm not in my 80s, but I'm telling you, I was pretty shocked. I mean, around here where I live in central London, it's been absolutely horrific, and it's got worse and worse and worse. I mean, we go to our local Sainsbury's, and there's, you know, I actually walked down the street one day, and I saw these guys outside, and they were just laughing, chatting, and they put masks on outside the door, giggling, and then went straight in. I don't know what they were, whether they were actually, I can't say they were actually doing it, but it was so blatant. And I mean, I'd go and, you know, do my sort of top up my telephone, and I noticed there's guards on the door now, so I've had long chats with the guards. I was so astonished that, you know, you're going one by one.
Yes,
and,
yes.
There's a lot of crime going on around here, I can tell you.
You're absolutely right, Georgia. Listen, thanks for your call. I really appreciate it. That's Georgia in London there. Peter's in Dorset and has given me a ring, 0344 499 1000. Facial recognition, I think, is what you want to talk about, Peter. What would you like to say?
Good evening, Peter.
Hi there.
Facial recognition, well, this would be a really nice addition to the police force if we were back quite a number of years. Yes, of course, it would be a handy addition to have now. But the thing that we've got to get to the bottom of is that all I can hear on your programme, other places, society, everybody's living in fear.
Yeah.
Everybody's living in fear of whether it's to do with their gender or whether it's to do with muggings, knifings, whatever. The shopkeepers are living in fear, waiting for violence from people stealing.
Yeah.
And it needs to be going back on the other foot. Instead of the public and being in fear of the criminals need to be in fear of going into some kind of penitentiary or some kind of treatment whereby going into prison is a bad deal.
Yeah.
Now, not just a question of whether we've got a problem of prison overcrowding. Now, if we had a situation, for example, I know it's a little bit right-wing and all the rest of it, but if we had a situation where people who created crimes were made to clean out polluted rivers or do some other kind of really unpleasant work that they've got to go and do, and life.
Well, there's got to be a deterrent, doesn't there? There's got to be a deterrent, Peter. And I don't, I wouldn't ever apologise for being right-wing, Peter. I think what you've got to say is there has to be a deterrent. The public need to take back control in some way. The police need to be have the power that they need and to be respected, and there need to be enough of them as well. I don't want a police state. I don't want every single person to be, under the cosh of the law all the time, but I do want a safe society, and we don't have that at the moment, Peter, do we?
Well, the situation is that we've got a crazy situation where people are getting arrested, sort of saying, "Oh, there's been arrests made." These people have hardly got time to have fried egg and chips in a police cell before they're being released, and they're not even being charged. I mean, look at the situation we had the other day. 500 people arrested.
Palestine Action. They'll all be.
And the whole lot.
Yeah, they're all let off. Every single one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, but we have to create a situation whereby the police don't have any powers when they've got nowhere to put these people. They've got no powers when there isn't a deterrent to stop these things happening. And how can we have a message sent out whereby, well, if you nick up to 200 quid's worth of stuff in the supermarket, well, don't worry about it. Well, yes, it's all right.
It's not that big a deal.
Well, this time,
Peter, I agree with every word you say. It is a dreadful, dreadful problem, and there just seems to be no deterrent whatsoever. So listen, thank you for your call there. Paul in Southampton has some thoughts on shoplifters as well. Paul, you're very welcome to the programme.
Hello, Peter.
Hi there.
It's this. You were talking to that ex-policeman reference these facial recognition bans. What is the point when people can go around with hoodies, balaclavas, face masks?
Well, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, they should be made illegal for a start. And I know you're going to get a few minorities jumping up and down going, you can't do this, boo-hoo. But it should be made illegal. And then those recognition bans are a good idea. Yeah. But until you're going to do that, it's an absolutely pointless thing to do.
Well, I think a lot of people will agree with you, Paul, and I think that is something that is at least one of the problems. Penny in Southampton is a store manager herself. Penny, I understand you actually confronted a shoplifter.
Yes, hi. Yes, I did. Hi, yeah. Yeah, it was a spate of quite a lot of robberies, actually, to be honest. The chap ended up taking about £1,000 worth of products from my store alone.
£1,000, my goodness.
Yeah, about £1,000.
So you confronted him. What happened there?
It was the fourth instance in our store. I spotted him coming in with his bag, as he normally does, a kamikaze shoplifter, I think they were calling them at the time. And basically I saw him and I just looked at him from the other side of the store and I said, no, put that back. I know what you're doing. Put it back. He stopped what he was doing and he tried to run for the door, basically. I'm not the biggest of people, maybe 5'2". This chap was probably about 6'3", quite largely built. And I blocked his exit and I just said, No, you need to be putting that back right now. Put it back.
Wow.
Talking
Well,
to him
good for you.
like a naughty schoolboy.
Do you know what, Penny? I'm sorry to interrupt you. I've got to talk to Kevin O'Sullivan because his show is coming up. Can we talk to you tomorrow, Penny? If we give you a ring back, can you tell us the full story tomorrow with a bit more time? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Right, Ryan, my producer, is going to talk to you right now, and we're going to arrange that. We're going to talk to Penny tomorrow and hear her full story, but I do want to hear what's coming up on Kevin's programme. Kevin, how are you doing?
Talking of shoplifting, Kevin O'Sullivan's in the studio. Yeah.
Speaking of petty criminals.
Yeah. There's nothing petty about my crime.
There's nothing petty about me either.
We're going to kick off with what I think... This is just so the way the authorities in this country roll. This is how Britain rolls. The people of this country go, listen, we have the right, we demand to know the ethnicity and the asylum status of people charged and accused of serious crimes, particularly sex crimes. The Prime Minister and the Home Secretary, Starmer and Cooper, agree.
Yes.
They say, yes, you're absolutely right. It is time we started levelling with you about this sort of information. And what do we get today? Guidance to the police that, yes, if the police decide, sometimes they may disclose this information, but only on the basis that they think that if they didn't do that, there might be disturbances like we saw last year in Southport.
It's absurd.
That isn't what we're asking for.
It's also two-tier.
Yeah,
it's completely two-tier.
Two-tier.
It's ridiculous.
And the police must not be allowed to make these decisions, because what they're going to do, this will make no difference at all, because in nearly every single case they will decide